You're now live, Your Worship.
Thank you very much, Kayla, and members of our staff for setting this up for our meeting tonight. Everybody, welcome to our Clearview Township Council meeting on Monday, April the 26th, 2021. This is our regular council meeting, and fortunately, we did not have any in-camera session. So, council, I can go directly to our regular agenda. So, council, item number 2.
Right on.
Yeah, on our agenda is approval of the agenda. A recommendation be it resolved that Council of the Township of Clearview hereby approve the agenda dated April the 26th, 2021 as presented. I'll look for a mover and seconder. That'd be Councillor Deneen, Councillor Broderick. Anything further for the agenda? Seeing none, I'll call the motion. All those in favor? And that motion carries. Thank you very much. Council, item 3, disclosure of pecuniary interest and general nature thereof. Is there any member with a disclosure at this time? All right, seeing none, if something comes up during the meeting, please bring it forward and we'll deal with it appropriately at that time. Item number 4, council, is public participation. Again, written comments are received until noon on the 26th. Please note that any submissions received after 12 noon will not be added. And at this time, there are no submissions to public participation. And as I like to remind everybody who wishes to, you're always welcome to contact members of council. You can email council@clearview.ca, and all members of council will receive that email if you have any questions. And further, if you have a public participation comment, you go to clearview.ca and find the link for public participation period to use the proper form. All right, members of council, we have a couple of deputations today on our council agenda. And so I think we should get right to it. It's item 5, deputations. So I'd like to welcome Watson and Associates. I believe, is it Gary going to do this or Daryl? I'm not sure. Kayla, let's start with Mike Ron. Hello, Mike. Nice to see you.
Nice to see you too. Yeah, so Gary Scanlon's going to present the financial report. So this comes directly from council's direction on March 8th meeting, directing staff to come back with financial options for the Southeast Stainer sanitary servicing, and Gary's here to present that. He and Jennifer and Daryl, who is also here with Gary, Jennifer Georges from RJ Burnside, has spent a lot of work on this in the last 2 weeks. So
is Jennifer with us? I'm not sure if Jennifer's on board here.
No, Jennifer won't be with us. So this is the financial aspect. We've reviewed all of Jennifer's work. Looking for a little bit of direction for a couple aspects, and I'll let Gary lead the whole conversation. He's our, the financial wizard that makes these complex projects come together.
Excellent. All right. Well, thank you very much, Mike, for that quick introduction. Gary and Daryl, nice to see you gentlemen again. Daryl, I hope your puppy dog is available because he was entertaining the last time we met in a meeting like this. So perhaps he'll join us again today. Who knows? But I'll turn it first to Gary. It's nice to see you, Gary. Welcome.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, members of council. Apparently, I was upstaged by a dog the last time, but I'll try.
Yes, I remember.
I'll try and be as charming. So thank you. Thanks for the introduction, Mike. Daryl's gonna, if Daryl can take control, I think Daryl's gonna run the presentation. As you're probably aware, I'm technologically impaired, so he's far better at this than I am. So we wanted to talk about the analysis we did for the Manor Town. So the EA that considered servicing of their lands, and there was also the potential for servicing outside of their lands, existing properties along Sunningdale and some of the other development properties that are in and around that area. So can we go to the next slide, Daryl, please? So obviously, you know, the area that we're speaking of, it's within the red area. So this was the EA evaluation that was undertaken by Burnside. They've presented that information to council, so we're springboarding from there. Hopefully I can be as eloquent as Jennifer in trying to present the engineering information, so we'll give it a try. The next slide. So they were looking at 3 different solutions, if you recall. They were looking at do nothing, so letting it sit. build a new pumping station and force main, which would service basically the whole area. And then they looked at one which was to assess or put the servicing in solely for Manitown Homes development. So they had done the costing and they had looked at the options. Now, when we get into it, we're looking at option 2. So the costing that we'll be presenting is for the most part option 2. So putting in a pumping station and a force main and the associated sewers that will service most of the area. And I'll say most because as we were going through, we observed that very large area, area I, which we'll show you in a minute on the map, it's so large, but the development is delayed potentially for perhaps 20 years or longer. And what that does is it impacts the totality of the calculations. And there's a lot of stranded expenditures that somebody has to front end. And it would be difficult for the municipality to front end it, for Manitown to take all of the obligations, et cetera, et cetera. So as we get into it, we are actually going to present to some extent a modified number 2 for tonight. And Jennifer from Burnside have adjusted the costing information for the pumping station, the force main, some of the pipes, in order to give you a costing that reflected that. Now, I'll talk a little bit more about it as we get into some of the maps and such. So for the most part, what we've got is the pumping station and force main that benefits all of the existing lands as well as Manitown and some of the other development related properties. There's gravity sewers that for the most part migrate from the west side down to the east and into the pumping station. There's a small section on the west side of the pumping station they'll fill in. And then there's some upsizing sewers still on Sunningdale and then to Phillips and then to Highway 26. And as well, there was discussion on the implications of considering urbanization of Sunningdale Street as well. So we'll talk about that. As you've noted, the last note, we'll talk about I, because the size of it and the impact of it actually is going to cause problems in cash flow and just allowing this area to develop, because they're not looking to develop in the near future. It's really still in a individual's hands, and even though it's in the built boundary, there's no real movement on that property. So next slide. So this is the area that was evaluated as part of the EA that was done by Burnside. The property I'm talking about is I in the blue, and you can see that's the bottom area. And if we take a look at the at I in the table below, you can see that the hectares are about almost 22 hectares of land, so very sizable. But the flows that are coming out of it basically represent, they're almost 50% of the flows that were calculated for all of these developing lands. And that's where we're talking about the cost associated with it is quite excessive. And basically we'll be sitting there with stranded expenditures that can't be cash flowed. So the biggest impact really is they will have to the pumping station, they will have to build a connection main. For the most part, it looks like the rest of the pipes can handle additional flows. We might have to do some improvements to the pumping station, upsize the pumps. Might have to put some additional wet well capacity. But for the most part, it could probably be handled with subsequent engineering. So we've looked to, as I say, to not include them in the calculations right now. So I'll describe the rest of the developments on this map so everybody's clear on what's being included. So the yellow is really which is categorized as H, is the existing properties along Sunningdale. So there's some that are on, so this is the totality of the lands. And actually, as I'll present to you for servicing, Sunningdale actually gets broken into 3 or 4 pieces. And that's important because the way that we're going to approach doing the calculations is measuring the flows through the different pipes, so that if it's all one portion is all existing residents or existing homes, then we'd be assessing, when we do all of our calculations, that particular pipe would be existing benefit, so we'd recover that through a capital charge for existing properties. The next subsequent section may have a blend of existing homes plus growth. So I'll just highlight it now, and we'll kind of talk about it in the next slide when I show you the pipe. So H is all of the existing homes. G and J are future development lands. So those 2 lands will actually be draining down into Sunningdale and then ultimately into the pumping station. K is the Manortown lands. And then L is existing. That's Timber Mart and the equipment sales. That's along the county road. So they're existing. And then on the west side, you can see that E is there'll be improvements within that drainage area, but as well, some of the flows that'll come down into this area are also coming from Ashton Meadows. So this sewer connection will be part of the Ashton Meadows discharge. So for the most part, that's being included in the development charge, but that's why I acknowledge that it's a broader area and the size covers not only these lands, but it also picks up part of Ashton Meadows. And then we have F, there's a small block there of development that'll feed into these lands ultimately. So that's the service area. And so we'll keep coming back to categorize these lettering, because that's the lettering that was provided to us by Burnside, so we'll stay consistent. If we go to the next slide, please, Terrell. So this is the servicing of the total area. I'm going to start with the red, and then because that's on Sunningdale, and I know I'm partway through Sunningdale, but I'll come back to that light blue and the orange in a minute. So the Sunningdale, in between that light blue and the red, and you can see with it that hash line is actually the force main connecting. Right at that particular point is a break in the lands. So from where the pumping station hits the red and the blue, that's a change in the gravity feed for the sewers. So the red is a sewer which is full gravity, and it's going from the west to the east, and it's just servicing those existing properties that abut that red line. So when we're looking at the calculations, we're looking at that pipe, we're looking at the flows, that would be allocated 100% to existing. You can see as we get into that gray blue that's still moving from west to east, you can see that that's not only going to take the flows from the red, but it's also going to take the flows from that G and the J. And that's represented in that blue line, that blue sewer that's coming off of those lands. And so when those developments proceed, they will build the blue at their cost. So that those two development lands, we haven't included that pipe in our costing, but that'll be 100% their cost. That'll be a local service, and we haven't put it in as a costing matter right now. And then when we get into that gray blue, we're not only going to pick up the red flows and what's coming through that blue main, but we're also going to pick up all of the properties along Sunningdale there, right down to where it curves and it hits the green line and goes into the pumping station adjacent to Manortown. Okay, I'll leave the green for a minute. If we flip over to the pink is taking existing flows as well. It's picking up the timber mart and the equipment retail guy, and it's also picking up those properties along Sunningdale. So there's about 6 existing properties that will discharge into that pipe and then ultimately go through the green to the pumping station. So then, we've allocated most of that, all of that pink to existing. The green picks up all of those lands, both growth and non-growth, and basically funnels those flows into the sewage pumping station. All of those flows, plus the flows from Manortown, which will now feed into that, will now go into that hatched area. And the hatched area is the force main. So it has to be forced basically uphill back to where that light blue line is in Sunningdale. Now that light blue is a gravity sewer, but it does not exist right now. So it's a brand new pipe that will also have to be built in order to take all of these flows. And then as it migrates from the east to the west, it goes into the orange segment of pipe, which actually exists today. But the problem is that existing pipe is too small for all of these flows that we just talked about, so it has to be upsized. So we then have the orange flowing into the yellow, and as I've noted, the pipe along Phillips and then on to Highway 26, that's taking everything along with flows that are coming from Ashton Meadows. The total cost of this is, with only the pipes and the pumping station, is $7.7 million. You can see at that table, the very bottom is representative of only the sewers, the force main, and the pumping station. If we did the urbanization, there's an extra $5.8 million to urbanize basically Sunningdale Street. Sunnydale Street. So it's a very long segment, and to bring it to an urban standard is quite expensive. So it'd be another $5.8 million. Now, we did put that project into the development charge, so there is a large portion of it being funded by development charges, but about 25% of that cost would be existing benefit and potentially would be imposed back on the Sunningdale residents. So we'll come back to show you the impacts of that. But so without the urbanization, just doing the sewer servicing, we're at 7.7 million. If we add the urbanization, it has another 15.8 million. So we're talking about $13.5 million, what was considered as part of the EA process. Okay, there any for the counselors? If hopefully I've expressed that well enough. I put on my engineer hat and try and act like an engineer. So if there's any questions, I'd be more than happy to retrace my steps on anything, just to make sure everybody's clear.
All right, thank you very much, Gary. Just leave that card up there, Daryl, for now. Any members of council have any questions? I cannot see you all, so I can see Councillor Walker. So you're up first.
Yeah, just to Gary, where the light blue is before you get to the existing sewer line. There are 3 properties there, and that other property that juts back in behind that are already on sewers as well. If I am correct with those are the 3. That line though runs across their property and into that house at the back. So they're hooked on to those 3 homes right where your force main elbows into the Cayenne. There's 4 homes right there that are on sewers on a line that runs on the properties, fronting of those 2 properties right there.
So those are, they built them within their own property and they're not hooked to a municipal sewer?
They're hooked to the municipal sewer, but they're built, the line is on their own property. Is that right, Mike?
You can get Mike
Ron
Ron.
would be able to answer that, I think. Pretty sure they're on their own property.
Mr. Munoz, this section right here.
Thank you, Your Worship. Yeah, Councillor Walker, I believe it's been a while since I actually looked at the sewer mapping. I know the one you're talking about has had a lot of problems with the sewer. I guess the short story is anybody that's connected to the existing sewer system and paying water and sewer rates will not have to pay for a service charge for a sewer line. So we'll confirm the counts and the numbers before we actually create the servicing bylaw.
Okay.
That sewer will be replaced though, regardless, whether it's on somebody's property or not. They will, the sewer will be replaced and it'll have to be connected to the larger, deeper sewer that's required there.
Yeah, that was, that happened years and years ago. I think special arrangement or something. I'm not just sure how that came to be. The other thing is on Phillips Street where they have the conceptual line for sewers. If you were to take that line to the west, there is a large chunk of property just before to the east of the yellow of your main trunk. That property will feed off of the Phillips Street section then, and not the blue, right? If that develops.
Correct. The sewer should be deep enough there that we can connect it. We won't be allowed to run sewers up the highway, right?
Yeah.
Anywhere that can be avoided, it has to be, there's sewer there now, so we can replace it.
Okay.
But MTO will not, allow us to do that unless it's absolutely necessary.
Okay. Thank you.
All right, is there any other members of council or even staff who have any questions? The Deputy Mayor, go ahead, Barry.
Thank you, Your Worship. And Gary, thanks for the detailed map. It really helps explain things. You made the comment that on Sunnydale Street, that 25% of the cost would have to come from existing residents. Does that mean these are residents who are not hooked up to sewer now? Are going to be charged a fee to cover the 25% of that cost?
It would probably be chargeable against all properties if all of them benefited from that road, right from Phillips Street all the way down to the end. So from left to right on Sunnydale.
So would that include the houses that are already, because there are some houses on Sunnydale that are on sewer, is that correct?
Yeah, but this is urbanization of the roads. So we would be looking at everybody benefiting from the urbanization.
So 25% of 13 million.
Well, it'd be the 5.8 million. So it's 25% of the 5.8.
5.8 million. Any idea how many residents that's affecting? Do you know off the top of your head? I'm trying to do some quick math here.
I think it's 90 or 100. It's well, I'll show you what the impacts are shortly.
Okay, great. Okay, thanks. I'm just trying to get a handle on how much it's going to cost each residence that lives on there. With a ballpark figure on what they're going to be dinged for.
It's roughly an extra $17,000 per house.
Thank you. That's what I was looking for, Gary.
Yeah. I may have rounded, but it's that order of magnitude.
Okay.
Close enough.
Okay.
Yeah, that's an excellent point and a good question. Anybody else with any questions at this point in the presentation? All right, I have a small one if I could for our staff, perhaps Mike. Mike, the standards for installing sewer lines today, do they require that individual connections or subscribers have backflow preventers, or is that something that's an optional thing for residences now, to prevent any type of backflowing on this type of system? Is that Is that part of the new design standards?
Your worship, so our engineering standards do not require backflow prevention devices in the laterals. Some municipalities do have that.
Right.
We didn't incorporate it. Now, some people, you're allowed to put them in the building as well. It would fall under a plumbing inspection. It's just a better place to put it. It can be maintained in a house. If you bury one, you don't know if it's actually working or not, and you cannot do maintenance on it. So we just haven't done that. They seem to cause a lot of problems with backups, from what I understand, is why we didn't incorporate it.
I already knew that answer, and I knew that the better option is for the individual residents to take that ownership and maintenance ability to bring it right into the house where the connection is. It's a better way to service it. It's a better way to maintain it. So it's certainly something for us to keep in mind as we move forward, so residents know that that we're not forcing them to do this, but as far as the backflow preventer, but it is a good policy. I see the CIO would like to say something. Go ahead, Mr. Ferguson.
Thank you, Mayor Measures. I'm not sure in Ontario, but do the insurance companies require the backflow preventers to be installed in the homes?
I'll bet you they will ask you about that when you're building, for sure. Mike, if you could comment.
I think maybe the CBO would be a better person to answer questions about plumbing code. I wouldn't want to say something and be wrong. And I do think I saw Scott was with us tonight.
Yeah. Is Scott McLeod available? Scott, are you monitoring?
Sorry, Scott, didn't mean to throw you into the...
Are you there? Oh, Scott.
Hi.
Hi, can you talk to us about your knowledge of plumbing fixtures?
Yeah, in terms of the sewer lateral, like from the house to the road, as Mike has indicated, the best location is within the dwelling where they can monitor and access it. Some municipalities have passed bylaws that I'm aware of, and that's where they're requiring the installation of them. And it's really an added measure, especially where you're dealing with older sewage system. If you recall Peterborough, when they had all the flooding, the high rainstorm there, and they had backup of the sewers, I believe that's a community that now requires that. The building code does require it now in buildings where that is known to occur, but we don't have any knowledge of where that's known to occur. So it's not, if we were in an area like Peterborough or whatever, where we had that knowledge that we had a vulnerable area of our municipality, that's something that the municipality could take a position on, but we don't have that. We've never been provided with that expert knowledge and that need. But some people certainly choose to put them in, and whether or not their insurance company looks to that, they probably do ask the question. I know a lot of insurance riders have been changed on people's insurance recently because of the connection, so that they actually have to pay for special coverage to have that protection. And so I'm sure that it is a question that is asked.
Okay, thanks, Scott. I hope that helps the CAO and Mike. It does help me in my question there too. I see Councillor Lamers. Go ahead, John.
Thank you, Your Worship. I'm not sure if it's for Mike or for Scott. Any existing houses on Sunnydale Street, do they have an option of hooking up or not?
That should go to Mike, perhaps. So, Mike, go ahead.
So, Councillor Lamers, through Your Worship, so typically whenever we do a servicing bylaw, it's everybody has to connect. There's a couple of reasons for that. Everyone will have to connect, and within a certain time frame. So when we build a pumping station and we size the pumps according to the number of units, what it would be like if we had a very large pump and only 2 houses hooked up for the first 6 months, basically the pumping station wouldn't be doing anything. It would be going septic. It wouldn't work properly. The second part of that is our official plan requires anything in the settlement area, if services are available, then they need to be connected, water and sewer. That's listed at least 3 or 4 times in the official plan. Provincial policy statement's the same. Settlement area should be serviced by full water and sewer. So if we are going to service this whole area as the outcome of the EA suggests we should, then we really need to ensure that everybody is connecting to the system and that everybody decommissions their septic systems.
Is that help, Councillor Leaders?
Yeah, thank you.
Okay. All right. Thank you, Mike. All right. So I think, Gary, you've got more to present. Is that correct?
Yes, I do, Mr. Mayor.
All right.
I'd like to proceed through, talk a little bit about the impacts on how we're going to, number one, how we're going to split up the costs and who pays for what is really the next part of it. So we're just, this page just summarizes just some of the mechanical calculations that we did. We've, the EA made a certain assumption for people per hectare. So that's how Burnside, we're doing the calculations on sewer flows. And through the DC, we've got a good handle on the persons per unit. So what we've done is we've converted all of the calculations to a standard unit. So everything is based on the equivalent of a single detached home. So that's how we've done the calculation. Even on the commercial lands, based on the flows, we've converted them to be an equivalent of a single detached equivalent. So then when we split off and start to prorate costs against each other, against the different lands, they're all being measured based on flow, but for ease of understanding, we've converted them to, as I say, the equivalent flow associated with a single detached home. And if we go to the next slide, this is where we've got the calculation. So we have E on the far left-hand side is those areas that I started with the map. So you remember H was the yellow area for the existing. So these are all the different lands. We have the area, and then we have the design flows. And then we've converted all of that. By the time we get to the extreme right-hand side, those particular properties have the equivalent of X number of single detached units. So the flow associated with those lands would be equal to 14 single detached, or 20, or 38, or 59. You can see that when we look at I, when I talked about it being basically half the lands, when we convert it to a single detached, its flow is about half of the total area. And that's that 259. That's why we're suggesting for the servicing to remove it right now, and then we'll do the rest of the calculations on the benefit arising from the residual of the lands. Now, when that area I comes on stream, any improvements will be 100% charged back to I. So if there's improvements on upsizing pipes, that'll be their cost. When we may need to make changes to the pumping station and the storage in the wet well, that'll be 100% their cost. Okay, so we've actually reduced the cost from what Burnside had put into the EA in order to reflect a smaller servicing area. Next slide. So when we're going to get into it, and I'll show you a chart in a moment that basically takes each of those pipes and the pumping station, the force main, and allocates it amongst different benefiting lands. And so we have obviously the Development Charges Act. So the development charge for sewers that you've passed, that would be one component of paying for these works. We then have this part 12 is, it's almost like a local improvement, but we always use this section of the act because the local improvements are a very cumbersome piece of legislation. You can do the exact same thing and impose a capital charge under part 12 of the Municipal Act. So it starts with clause 391. And why we always suggest it is far more flexible on how you do the calculations, where local improvements has a very narrowed way of doing the calculation. It also allows council, once you pass the bylaw, then it cannot be appealed to LPAT. The local improvement can, so then there's all these deductions and adjustments. But for full cost recovery, when you go through the public process and you finally make a determination, then those charges being imposed are basically non-appealable. So very strong piece of legislation, but it does mean that you should have a public process to engage everyone so that you've taken all of their comments into consideration. So under Part 12, there's actually going to be two pieces. There is, as we've talked about, all of the existing homes that will benefit from having the sewers in front of their homes, and there will be a portion of the pumping station and a portion of the force main that they'll be contributing to. But there'll also be some works which are smaller in size, and they basically will be imposed on new development because they benefit from the flows. And it's not a DC. In the DC, we set a minimum size, and it has to, in order to be included in the DC, it has to be at that size or above in order for us to have it for that. If it's smaller, then it falls into a direct benefit to a landowner, and they either pay for it as they develop their subdivision, or we can right now, when we pass the bylaw under Part 12, we can start charging those lands. Even though they're not ready to develop now, we've put the servicing in place. They now benefit. The value of the lands is going to change as soon as you do it. So we can either impose a charge immediately for them to pay, or them along with anybody that's under these Part 12 charges, you can offer a loan to, so they can maybe pay over 15 years. So you don't have to come up with the cash immediately, but you can pay over 15 years or 20 years. But obviously you as the municipality have to go out and issue the debt to cash flow those works. So Part 12 is like a local improvement, but it's a more powerful section of the Act. And we've used this extensively in places like when we've serviced King City, when we've serviced Nobleton. We're considering servicing within Erin, just kind of to the southeast. And so that's how we service the existing lands. And then there are basically rate-supported reserves, or there's a portion of these costs which will come back and are basically paid for through your wastewater rates or through your wastewater reserve. So under the DC, there's a certain part that are existing benefit. So they would have to come back and be paid for through your existing wastewater rates. So those are the key pieces of legislation. And if we go to the next slide, well, this is how we've broken the costs down. So we have development charge projects. So the new pumping station, as well as the upsizing of the existing sewer on Sunnydale and the upsizing of the Phillips Street sewer, they were identified in the development charge study. So those are part of the DC provisions. So they're paid for by growth. And when we jump forward a little bit, we'll be looking also for Manortown to cash flow those growth related projects that are under the DC. You can see as well the very last project, the Sunningdale Urbanization, the road. It's there. You can see that 4.3 million is DCable, roughly about 1.5 million recoverable from the existing properties, and it's about 5.8. Now that project doesn't have to be done today. It's in the DC. It can be done at any time. So whether it gets implemented now, implemented 5 or 10 years from now, that's at the discretion of council. So it's not integral to making this servicing plan for the sewers work, but it is there to be considered. As we move across, you can see that when I talk about local service, those are pipes that benefit growth, but they're smaller sized pipes. and therefore they are paid for by the developers for their share. So the first local service is a direct contribution by Manortown. So they'll not only pay the DC portion, but they'll also pay a local share of it. And as we move to the right, you can see some of the gravity sewers, because remember, we're building on the flows that are going through the pipes. So some of the G and some of the J, they benefit from the construction of these sewers as well. So that would be recoverable from those lands, but we'd recover it under the Municipal Act. The existing properties would be under that charge, that Part 12 charge, and this is their share of all the works. And then there is a small component that would be paid for through the wastewater rates or the reserves. And then you can see taxes would be either, you could put the urbanization onto property taxes for those existing, or you could collect it as a local service. So that's why we've kind of highlighted it there. You have the choice to do it that way. And so we'll talk about the implications of that in a minute. So this is how we've sliced and diced the flows going through all the pipes, and this is how we would allocate the benefit of all these works. Now, I know it looks a little bit complicated, but I'll show you how we've summarized it and the impacts on each of the benefiting lands in a couple of slides. So next,
I'd like to take some questions right now, Gary.
Absolutely, certainly.
No problem. The Deputy Mayor's got his card up. Go ahead, Deputy Mayor.
Yes, Gary. So when I look at the bottom line, there says Sunnydale urbanization. You've got DCs is 4,346. Then you got tax reserves, adds up to the 5.8. So the DCs, are we charging the existing landowner those DCs because it is urbanization and improvement?
It's probably from your broader reserve fund pool for development charges. This urbanization isn't directly associated with Manortown. They do have a responsibility with the sewer servicing, but we actually, whether the works are done now or done later, it doesn't impact the development of Manortown's lands.
Okay, so I'm just trying to understand, and pardon me if I'm not quite catching this, but you said 25%, which is 5.8 million, worked out to about 17,000 per household. Those are the people who are existing on sewer, but would have to pay $17,000 per household for urbanization. Is that correct?
Well, that would be all of the land, all of the properties on Sunningdale. All the existing landowners would contribute towards that $1.5 million.
However, Barry, just want to clarify, Barry, you said those that are on sewers. So there are some properties that are currently connected to our municipal service on Sunnydale. Those are not eligible. Is that correct, Gary and Mike? The ones that are currently customers of ours, Mike?
Thank you, Your Worship. So generally, there's a number of houses not connected to sewers. So they would connect at their fair share. The urbanization is another matter. The urbanization of Sunnydale Street is in our DC background study, and it's a project that's listed as being 20 years out. Because it's in the background study, we can take money that we're taking in from developments all over Stayner, from them, their little portion of their DC that goes towards roads goes into a roads DC reserve.
Yep.
To pay for all different types of intersection improvements, the ones we've been talking about purchasing lands for and things like that. Because this one's in the DC study for the future, we can use that if council would like to fund that $4.3 million portion of it. The other 25% that's benefit to existing has to be recovered from somewhere. And in Clearview, anywhere there's been a benefit to existing, it's been recovered through a servicing bylaw to the benefiting owners. We did a servicing bylaw for the South west corner of Stainer, the industrial servicing area, if council recalls. All the upgrades there were divvied up on a per meter basis for all of those properties. So if that helps.
Okay, so Barry, I acknowledge it. I just want to clarify, Barry, because you said that it's for those that are on sewers now. Well, there are people that have their own private servicing along that street that are then going to be asked to connect to the public servicing along that street, and those are the new customers. There are some that have servicing on our public system right now, and that part of that, that's where I was hoping to get a clarity from Mike. And so, Barry, go ahead.
So I'm just talking about the urbanization right now.
Okay.
And you've got a total in here of let's call it 5.8 million for the urbanization, right? It says no wastewater, so the urbanization. So Gary, when you were explaining to me your last comment, I kind of lost. It didn't quite come through. So this 5.8 million, that's urbanization only, has to be recovered from all the residents on Sunnydale Street that are benefiting from it. Is that?
In the development charge, we allocated it as non-deceivable. The 1.48448 million we identified as non-deceivable. So there was a portion not recoverable from the DC. And my understand past policy is that those works, because they benefit directly the lands, the homeowners along Sunningdale, that they would be recoverable from Sunningdale properties. You could alternatively, I guess you could recover them from property taxes, but we're in discussions with staff. We're following past practice to suggest that if you were to do those works, then that 1.448 million would be recoverable from the benefiting land owners, which is the properties on Sunningdale.
So I just want to be clear here. So the dollar figure so this $17,000 per household, is that based on the 1.448 million? Yes. Okay, that's what I was trying to get. Okay, so now I understand. Okay, thanks. Sorry, it was a little confusing, but I just so if I divide the 1.48 by 17,000, it'll tell me roughly how many households are affected.
It's about 90 households.
Yeah.
In fact,
thank you.
Thank you so much, Gary. It really helps.
All right, now, excellent. I see our CAO, Mr. Ferguson. Go ahead, John.
Thank you, Mayor Measures. Gary, the $17,000 per that would get attached to these homes on Sunnydale. You mentioned that earlier in your presentation that the cash flows or the requirement from the municipality to recover that debt. What is the amortization for that? So the homeowners would have, for some that may have that cash, they could probably pay it outright if they chose to. But is there an amortization process for other homeowners?
So good, through you, Mr. Mayor, good question, Mr. Ferguson. You can offer them to basically pay it immediately, or most municipalities allow them to pay over a period of time. There is no, you have the flexibility if you want to allow them a 10-year loan, a 15-year loan, or a 20-year loan. So there's no, it's your choice. If we look at places like King City and Nobleton, which put in extensive sewers, they basically did a 15-year debenture.
Right. Okay.
And they had about roughly about 35% of the people settled their cost immediately, and 65% took the loan.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Anybody else with any questions on this slide? I have one for Gary and or Mike. I know we've been speaking a lot about Sunnydale. I am interested, however, in Phillips Street, wondering if there is any urbanization plan for Phillips Street as a result of both the the Ashton Meadows requirement that's going to be on that street, and now this Manortown / Sunnydale forcing the Phillips Street to be frankly dug up and have a new pipe put in there. Is there any talk about or any thought of any type of urbanization or any recoup in regards to that along Phillips? Mike.
Your worship. So the Phillips Street north of Sunnydale Street is part of the EA area.
Right.
The part that would go south from Sunnydale Street would be the part that Ashton Meadows requires in order to service their lands. That street does not go straight through. So that's not going to be an intersection at Warrington. There will be a servicing corridor, an easement only. So the road won't go straight through the road. The road is too narrow between Highway 26 and Sunnydale Street to do anything with it. We're going to be, to put a sewer line in there and to keep the existing one active while we're doing it. We're going to be lucky to do that. It's going to be a tough job. But there is no room on that. The right of way is very narrow. So no, the short answer is no. We won't be urbanizing Sunnydale Street, and it wouldn't be considered.
Sorry, Phillips Street. You meant we will not be.
Phillips Street. Thank you.
Yeah, we will not be urbanizing Phillips Street. Other than when it's all said and done, it'll be a nice new piece of asphalt on top of all those new pipes. Is that right?
Yes, sir.
Okay. All right. I think we've banged that one around. Okay. Anybody else? All right. I'll turn back to Daryl and Gary. Go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Next slide, please. So if we take the cost extending off of that local, that part 12 amount for the existing properties, and we've costed it all in on the left-hand side, let's go on the right-hand side. The right-hand side is the share of the wastewater servicing only. So it doesn't include the urbanization. So there's about $2.5 million that has to be collected from the benefiting properties. So it's approximately $28,000 per property for that benefit. If we add on top of that the cost of the road, it's about $44,000 for the sewer servicing plus the urbanization of Sunningdale. And I guess I'm a little off. I looked at the 27 versus the 44. That's where I came up with my 17. I guess with rounding, it's actually about $16,000 difference per household. Okay. So if we go with the servicing and the benefit of the wastewater, we'd have to be offering loans. We'd be debenturing. We'd offer the residents the opportunity to pay their $28,000 up front, or give a loan over 10, 15, 20 years, whatever council deems most equitable. And then on the, if we go with the urbanization, then I have to consider that extra $17,000 charge. Next slide. So of all of the cost, and this cost is just the sewer, and it doesn't include the servicing, the urbanization. We've got about $2.4 million that directly are Manortown's development charge related costs. In total, the 2.4 million, if you take their number of units and times it by the development charge, it's $221,000. But we would be asking them to, in addition to that, is to front end the rest of the growth related costs. So that would be an additional $2.2 million they would front end. They put the front ending is basically a loan, and they will get it back as other lands develop, and those lands pay into the pot, and then they will, through the agreement, agree to flow the cash back. This is similar to what we're doing with the water supply, where the developers have to be front ending. Part of it will be a prepayment of the development charge, and that's the 221. The rest is a front ending loan, and that loan will be paid back to them over time. There's also the local service. So this is where it's developers related costs. And so, but a 1.1 million in addition is Manortown's portion. And then the G and J, their portion of the cost is another $1 million. So that would be something we would impose, and those lands would have to contribute under a Part 12 bylaw. And then we have the remaining costs, and we've talked about the 2.5 million. That's the existing lots. That's the $28,000. And then there's about 600,000 that actually have to be paid from wastewater rates. So after we've gone through and sliced and diced all the benefits of it, this is really how the recovery of all of those costs would be undertaken. If I stop there, Mr. Mayor, are there any questions on this particular one?
Okay, we'll open it up. Is anybody? Okay. Carry on, gentlemen.
And so we were hopeful of reaching out to Manortown before this meeting. Unfortunately, because of my scheduling and stuff, I do have some hearings that are in progress, so I didn't get the chance to connect, but Daryl and myself will connect with them over the next couple of days to chat to them about this, and then we'll provide those comments subsequently. And then the next slide just talks about next steps. This is the last slide. With council's direction, we'll talk to Manortown and talk to their financial obligations arising from this. We need council's direction on the impacts on the existing homes for the wastewater servicing, and then potentially for the urbanization. We will require some of the costs we identified in here are higher than what we originally included in the development charge. Obviously, we had estimates from a couple of years ago. Now you've had Burnside in doing very detailed, so we'll need to update some of those costs. And just as an aside, the work that Burnside's been doing on the water supply, the costs are actually increased as well. So we can wrap all of that into an update of the development charge. And we would look to do that over the next 2 or 3 months.
Okay.
And then we obviously, with Manortown securing an agreement through an agreement, get the prepayment of the charge as well as them cash flowing the front ending contributions. And then, and this is based on your direction, we would prepare those Part 12 bylaws and impose the capital charges on council on the benefiting properties. So basically, we're seeking council's direction. If everything's good, we'll update the DC. Then we'll move forward to prepare those the calculations, and we would probably look to engage with the public in some manner that council feels appropriate, and then go from there to impose the charges.
All right. Anybody with any questions? Oh, I see Councillor Patterson's there. Hello, Tom. Go ahead.
Okay, I had 2 concerns, but Gary just answered the one. I'm glad to see we're doing an update of the DCs based on the newer estimates. And on give me some sense of how this public will be engaged. Are we going to do this globally across Clearview? It's very narrow interest in terms of who's affected, or are we going to try to engage the community in a more detailed way, maybe one that it may be a lot more personal since we're talking about their money?
No doubt. Let's go to Mike first on that, and then perhaps the CAO and Gary himself. Go ahead, Mike.
Thank you, Your Worship. So there is a report coming up seeking direction from council on a couple of these items. The DC bylaw amendment is something that the treasurer had in the budget.
Yeah.
Right. So in order of steps, if Manortown Homes, if Gary reaches out to them and they're not interested in this project almost dies, right? So after that process with Manortown, and assuming that they're going to move forward, then we start the, public engagement with the owners of Sunnydale Street, an open house type thing for the prior to having the bylaw put in place. Something to consider, and having that urbanization in the DC background study. So if, you know, I'm always trying to cautiously looking for ways to save people money, but if you get a $68,000 improvement in front of your house for $17,000, perhaps the owners along Sunnydale Street would like that urbanization to take place. 75% being covered under DCs, like I hadn't considered that until, you know, this week. Gary can answer the other questions, but everything in here except the DC bylaw is in the next report that follows this presentation for direction.
Yes, for sure. It's in there. Thank you. Gary, you got any comments on that question from Councillor Patterson?
So I didn't want to jump ahead of the CAO, but basically the normal process is these costs benefit just a small segment of Stainer. So it's only really the properties in and around Sunningdale. So those normally are the ones that we would engage with. It really doesn't affect the broader residents of Stainer. So it'd be a localized public process.
All right. And Tom, I can go to John here and ask the procedure that you would like to see in regards to what a public engagement may look like. So Mr. CAO and Mike, how would we do this to get this public engagement in a more focused manner as to what Councillor Patterson's mentioning here about this local area that we need to talk to? Any ideas?
Well, I think it's an important point, and I think the citizens on that street will need to understand that the infrastructure is being renewed. And no matter how long you live on a street, or if you're new there, if you've been there for many years, you'll understand that infrastructure needs to be renewed at a certain point in time. So there's that benefit as well. Ultimately, they need to understand completely why this is being done. So targeting those individual homeowners, I think, is the key piece. Corresponds first, and then an opportunity to explain it to them in detail so they understand what's occurring in their community, and actually the cost savings as being a part of a larger development charge process means that even the fee that they will pay it's less than what would have been if they were renewing the complete infrastructure. So I think we have to engage them, help them understand that process, and everybody has a different ability on how they will approach how they would fund that, and we have to be open to make it as flexible for people as possible so that it works within their budgets.
All right, perfect. Thank you. Mr. Patterson, anything further? Tom?
No, I like the suggestion I think Mike made, and I agree with the comments from the CAO that we need to be more focused. The open house has always worked really well. And so I think that would be probably the best idea.
All right. Go ahead, Mike.
Thank you. Again, so when we've done this prior, like we've done it for Mowat Street, we've done it for Locke Avenue at the east end, the industrial servicing area. We sent registered letters to the affected owners for the servicing bylaws and had open houses. A little bit different looking in COVID, but as the CEO said, absolutely focus directly on the owners of the houses, let them know what's going on. And we have offered before, multiple ways people either prepay. I think it was a 20-year debenture for the industrial servicing area. The finance director could confirm that, but it's always been flexible and something that our, the taxpayers can work with.
Okay. I see Councillor Deneen first, Tom, and then I'll come back to you. Go ahead, Phyllis.
So what Mike was saying then is we'll approach it that they're getting if they just do the urbanization, they're getting a $64,000 improvement for $16,000. And if we just do the wastewater, they're getting about $112,000 value for about $28,000. And then if we do it all, it's $176,000 value for $44,000. Would we be able to give them a choice to put that over 10, 15, 20 years? Would they have that choice? Depending on the family, they would have that, Mike?
Mike, or go ahead.
So Councillor Dean, yes. So we would borrow the money for the entire project, a debenture, and everybody would be required to pay so much a month. You know, how that works is the finance department does that, whether it's on their taxes, I believe it's an add-on for a certain number of years. Now, our rate of interest may not be as good as what somebody can get privately, so they may want to get a line of credit at 1.5%. Our interest rate may be a little bit more, so that there's different ways people can tackle this. But we also have to keep in mind that these are homes that have working septic systems, and it is going to be a cost to them. So always cognizant of the effect that this has, but it, you know, if we go through all the process and all the rules for the province and the municipality and the environmental assessments, and when the outcome is service the properties, you know, it's tough, but at least it's like you said, there is a benefit that it will increase the property values at some level, and you know, septic tanks don't last forever, so maybe that's helpful.
Absolutely. Certainly at my house, I've had that very issue. 2007 had to replace mine, so I know exactly what that feels like. All right, I did see Tom first, so we'll go back to Tom and then Councillor Lamers. Go ahead, Tom.
Yeah, I just want to confirm that I think we should exercise the Part 12 option. But the one question I had under that scheme is 10, 15, 20 years, that would be per household, not a global loan structure that they all had to buy into, either 10, either 15, or either 20 years.
If I can suggest or ask, we would probably prepare different options that they could then engage financial satisfaction with us at the township, or as Mike suggested, they may be able to do their own personal financing on it. So we could provide different options that council will support, and then the Treasury could prepare combinations. Is that right, Mr. CAO?
Yeah, it could be designed for each homeowner depending on what amortization they wanted to choose and what was approved for us under the Municipal Government Act.
Correct. Mr. Scanlon, go ahead.
The only, the only thing I would say is you're going to have to go to Infrastructure Ontario to get the loan. So you have to sort out very early in advance how many want a 10-year, how many want a 15, how many want a 20. It is potentially an available option. We should probably just talk to IO before we go out and say that we're going to do it this way. It's just, I know they have their own rules and such, and it's always, I think we can do it. I would just say that we should probably chat with them first.
Well, I would hope that this council will see a report from Treasury with Mike and the CAO sorting that part out, and I know that they'll draw upon your advice. Excellent. Thank you, Tom, for bringing that up. Barry, you've been very persistent. Oh, hang on. Tom, you want to say something?
Well, just the last thing, I think it's important that we get a professional assessment of the impact on the housing prices from this, so that it's something they can appreciate. Is it real? Is it significant? So I think I'd like to see maybe somebody who knows our real estate well, or Gary might suggest how we might do that. All
right. Maybe Mr. CAO, you could make a note of that and make that part of the report from the finance department. So yeah, I got John and Barry have been terribly persistent. So I'll go to you first. Go ahead.
Thanks. Thank you, Your Worship. And it's just, I'm just trying to get a total understanding of this. So, and I think our finance department, maybe even Councillor Deneen might be able to help support or answer this question. So if they got to take this loan, whether it's 10 or 15 years, they get the sewer put in that, 2 years down the road, they sell their house. Is that loan not registered as a lien against the house? And when the house is sold, that lien has to be paid off? Or does that lien carry through to the next owner?
Let's go to Gary first, so that there's no conflict here. Go ahead, Gary.
Generally, it would carry on with the existing owner. It normally lays with the land. But what happens from time to time is that if I'm purchasing a house off you, I may say, okay, but settle up any of the debts. Like, I'm giving you the value, I shouldn't be paying for this. It does happen. And there is a calculation where we kind of do a present value of the stream of payments. We discount it back and we'd give you a dollar amount to buy out. that money sits in a reserve, and then the treasurer pulls out a little bit every year in order to make the payments towards Infrastructure Ontario. It's fairly straightforward. It's done commonly.
Yeah.
But normally it lies with the land, but if you want to buy it out, it is possible.
Yeah. If I can, go ahead, Barry. Are you all good? Thank you. Go ahead, John. And while John's speaking, Daryl, could you do me a favor and put up the map that shows the different areas with the letters? Go back, keep going. One of the first indications. Keep going right there. Just leave that up for a minute and go ahead, Barry. Or John, I'm sorry. Go ahead, John.
No,
Thank
go
you,
ahead,
Rick.
Barry. I'll wait until Barry asks his question and then I'll.
Okay.
I'm done.
Okay, Mr. Lamers, go ahead. Too many Johns on my screen here.
Thank you, Your Worship. With Gary or Mike, with all these calculations and everything, does anything apply to decommissioning the old septics? Or is that all on top of this again?
Mike?
Yeah, no, Councillor Lamers, through the chair. Decommissioning and connection to individual houses will be borne upon the homeowner, will require plumbing inspections. And it's not included in this. This project stops at the municipal property line.
Is that helpful, John? Lamers?
Yeah, so all these numbers, 17,000 or whatever, you're adding another 3,000 to 5,000 on top of that to decommission these properties.
At least 5 in today's numbers.
Yeah, perhaps more than that even, yeah. Gary, go ahead.
That's a very good point. It is in addition, and we've seen it vary, but it varies depending on how far the house is set back from the road. It's the septic system at the back of the house, therefore it's got the pipes have to come all the way around. Yeah, obviously have to decommission the septic and fill it up. I know that some municipalities, give you an example, Lincoln, which is down in Niagara, when they were doing similar type of thing like this, they didn't, the municipality can't contract for it, but what they did was collectively help the landowners put out a tender, so help them generate a tender process so that they got the best rates. If I'm a business, I'm coming in and I can do 90 properties, then I can obviously be cost effective because my crews are there just moving from one house to the next. So I found that they were very effective in assisting the existing property owners in doing that. So it's an option.
Good. Thank you very much. I have Councillor Leishman. You're next, and then back to Councillor Lamers. Go ahead, Connie.
Hi. Thank you. I just wonder how long do people have to hook up to this? Because if they have 10 years and they're going to drag it out for 10 years, we're not going to be getting any money or any payments for that. So what kind of limit are we putting on this?
Go to Mike on that one, Mr. Ron.
Gary did have his hand up, but typically we've only allowed a 2-year connection through our bylaws for these. And again, that's to do with not letting things fall through the cracks, and also so the pumping station runs properly when it's commissioned.
Okay.
Gary had his hand up for something. He'll know more about this.
Well, some municipalities have allowed up to 5 years. I'm just saying some municipalities, but they've started imposing the charge immediately. So the only difference, so they allow up to 5 years for connection, but you start to pay for the servicing right up front.
Okay, you start paying for the servicing, but you're not paying for the loan or the costs of hooking up yet.
You certainly will be paying for the cost of the loan
Right.
for the servicing, whether you want to delay the cost of your property improvement, like the decommissioning the septic and then putting the pipe into the house. As Mike's noted, normally your process is you give up to 2 years.
Right.
But they're normally, with most municipality, there's a time frame where you must hook up. So that'll be something, whether you look at a historic precedent for the municipality, or whether you want to grant something different.
Okay, so that's something that council grants.
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, good. Councillor Lamers, I think you were next. If there's anything further, go ahead, John Lamers.
Thank you. Yes, whenever you're doing your talking to the people on Sunnydale Street, you're gonna have to make that clear that this only covers the services to the property line, and everything from the property line into the house and decommissioning is all extra on top of that. That won't be included in the 17,000. They won't be able to get a loan through the municipal for that portion, would they?
That's so
Go ahead.
that's correct. We would make that very clear at the public meeting or the open house, however we handle that. You know, we may even be able to get cost estimates from somebody who's done something similar recently. But we have not done that before in Clearview. If Gary has heard of that somewhere else, I like what he said about Lincoln, helping them do a collective contract to get a better cost. I hadn't heard that before. Great idea, but yeah, it's, you know, I've seen people, we've had people hand dig their sewers in and had them inspected in Creemore when we did that whole town, and other people will hire a, you know, very expensive contractor, and the end result's the same. It has to be inspected, it has to be connected, and it can be done affordably, right? Pumping the septic tanks, maybe $350, filling it full of sand isn't overly expensive. It's just who you get in there and how good they are.
Yes, Mr. Ferguson, go ahead.
Just on Councillor Lamer's question, were you asking if the costs of the piping that would have to go into the, for example, the rear of the house to replace the sewer piping, could they have that money borrowed from the municipality, and that would also form a portion of their property taxes? Is that what you were asking?
John?
Yeah, if they could add that into what they're on top of the 17,000, or if that would, the 17,000 is just at the road and they'd have to do their property line in, take care of that themselves.
Gary, if I may, I'm not sure if that's permissible in Ontario. I do know that the ability to charge things on property in other provinces is permissible, but it would be a provincial decision, and I don't think they have legislation to permit that.
Gary?
I don't think you have the ability to, that's why when I was speaking of the private servicing on their property, that would be their cost. I don't think you would want to take any liability or exposure stepping onto somebody's property to deal with their septic system. And as such, you wouldn't be able to give them a loan for that work. So that would be something where, you know, they'd have to go to their own, you know, extent, added onto the mortgage, you know, second mortgage rates right now. I know I renewed, work with my kids to renew their property, and they're at 1.8%. So very good time for financing. So.
Yeah. All right. Anybody else? Because I got a couple questions. So I know Councillor Walker, you had your card up. I'm just looking if there's anybody else. Okay, go ahead, Bob.
Yeah, thank you, Worship. To Councillor Lamer's question, in the discussions I've had with quite a number of residents on the street, since I live on the street and I will be affected by this process, they are all understanding that the costs from the municipal road allowance in and decommissioning will be their costs. They all understand that already. The decommissioning of the septic system, I've already talked to the company that I use, and there's two ways of doing it: either totally removing the tank or crushing the top in and then filling the tank up. Those are options. And so all that is known to most that I've talked to anyways. The other thing is the questions I've asked by other councilors in the past in this municipality, we have set the years for payment. We have set the hookup, as Mike has said, to within 2 years after you have to hook up to it. The payment starts immediately once the lines are commissioned. So all that is a process that we've been with all along. That's not changed any. It's just a continuation of what we've had in existing. And I think the public informing them through the best measures we can and in the times we're in would certainly help answer any other questions that they do have. So it's a project that I know I've talked to the septic people, and you know, a new septic's worth about 20 grand right now put in. So depending on your ground, etc. So value for your money, folks. It's something that actually I'm looking forward to moving forward with it.
Okay. Thank you very much, Councillor Walker. I've got an engineering question in regards to water servicing. And then I have a question for Gary and or our CAO in regards to debt capacity. So I'd like to go to Mike first. Mike, obviously Sunnydale Street has one of our wellheads on it, and we are going to continue to use that wellhead. So during this construction process, are you anticipating that there will be a water main project as well? Will we be adding or upgrading or changing out the water line as well as our wastewater system install? Is that part of this project that's sort of a separate construction item that will end up being part of a contract? Mike?
Thank you, Your Worship. We have discussed putting the water main on the street while we're ripping it up.
Sure.
That particular street, because of the wellhead, actually has 2 water mains on it for a certain amount of distance. It's a long story why, but it's the large main that goes out through to Highway 26 was made to mix chlorine, a contact time prior to the need to have chlorine analyzers on site and whatnot. But I think Jennifer and Gary were working on this, and Daryl a lot in the last 2 weeks. I pushed them because I didn't want this sitting around for another 3 weeks, people wondering what was going on. So thank you very much, Gary and Daryl. But Gary, I think you had a conversation with Jennifer about that water main, and because of the urgentness of this going on, I don't know how that ended, if we were going to put the water main, or was it determined that it was young enough, so to speak, to leave it?
Gary, you got any thoughts on that?
I don't think we finalized our conclusions, but I think your observation's right, Mike. I don't think it was a major concern, but let's circle back with her and just confirm so we can get back and I can give you the proper answer to council. But I think it's, anyway, I think it's okay, but we'll come back to it.
I just throw in, like, I know we have a water main replacement schedule, and it's a 5-minute lookup to see the age, the size, the type, and I do believe it's a 6-inch plastic main, which means it will probably last for, you know, another 100 years. But if it's, there are some old asbestos concrete pipes in town that aren't dangerous, but they need to be replaced.
For sure. Well, you know, I the only reason I bring it up is every time I think about doing any type of renovation, when you carve into a wall in an old house, you gotta expect there's going to be a whole lot of concerns. And to be honest, I don't think it's going to be a whole lot different carving into Sunnydale Street itself. You know, maybe it's a new piece of pipe, but by the time we start doing it, it might be better off just to replace it anyway. And then we'll have a better understanding. But anyway, obviously you'll make those decisions based on good engineering. So I just wanted to ask that question. And so council, now I have a bigger question for Gary and or a CAO and Mike. There was one of your slides in here, Gary and Daryl, that indicated that front ending was going to be handled or asked by the developer Manortown to carry some of the debt. The reason I asked for this particular slide to come up is I wanted to get you to explain that a little bit now that we can see all these again. Area K is the area that is called Manortown. and they are going to be asked to carry the cost of the pumping station, and you said $1.1 million worth of all this work. But then other areas that are going to be developed or could be future developments, J, G, F, some of those areas, even L, will have future capacity available, and they're going to be carrying the debt for that. Is that how that works, Gary? Maybe I'm just looking for you to explain that portion again.
So what we understand is G and J are developable lands.
Yes.
Along with K. So that's where we've allocated the growth portion. They will all pay a portion of the development charge, so they'll be in it. The DC payment from K is only 220,000. That's if you take their number of units times it by, I think there's 73 units times the charge, it generates for that component of it about 221,000. They will front end and cash flow back over time. They'll get the money back for the loan for the front ending. Now, we looked at this relative to if they had to go on their own, they'd be paying for a pumping station and force main, which is $2.8 million. So it's actually cheaper for them to go with this broader solution, and the cash flow is actually better if they go with the total area. G and K, their development charge, they will pay whenever they choose to develop. So probably part of their payment flows back to Manortown to pay for the front-ending loan.
That's what I was hoping to understand. So that's great. And again, that by them front-ending it, that will not be leaning against our municipal debt capacity for that portion because they're carrying it, right? It's not leaning on us. Is that correct, Gary?
Absolutely. You have that correct, Mr. Mayor.
All right. See, I'm just a little sensitive about our debt capacity, as you know, I have to think of all of the projects that Clearview Township's involved with right now. And while this is one that's very important and very timely and very critical, we have other debt capacity issues that we have to maintain and try to manage. So that's why I want to bring this up during this discussion, so members of council and the public can understand that while this is one of them, there are many debt capacity issues that we're dealing with across the township and trying to manage what we can and cannot do within our abilities. And Mr. CAO is very quickly becoming updated on this information as he's reading all the files of the township. So thank you, John. And over to you, Mike. You were going to say something?
Your worship, so that big block I at the bottom of the page, you know, the debt capacity was one of the main reasons that you know, Gary said that this doesn't work. You know, it was part of the EA as we should service it. It's in the settlement area, you know. Maybe it's not supposed to be in the settlement area. I don't know if there's people in that area that want to develop or not. It'll be part of the public process, I guess. But you know, to do this later, it's going to be very expensive to expand the pumping station, but it's just not doable right now to service the whole area, including I. Very important to remember that if, you know, if one or two landowners are upset because they followed the EA and they're in that area, and now we're saying, well, we can't service it. Well, that's why if together as a group they came up with the money, the difference, I think it was $3 million, and by all means we would do it now.
Fair enough. All right. Anybody else have anything further on this? We've got a great presentation, a lot of information. I think our staff have got some a report that they want us to review here a little later on after we have another. Actually, is that happening right now? Let me just see. Is that on our agenda? Yes, it is. Okay, Mike, thank you, Gary and Daryl. Anything further you want to add?
No, that concludes our remarks, Mr. Mayor.
All right, well, thank you, gentlemen, and we appreciate that. So, Mike, you have a report. Do you want us to put this on the table and you want to speak to it, or what's your pleasure, Mike? It's your report.
You can read the recommendation, your worship. Basically, it was just to get something, an official recommendation from council based on what Gary's presented. Okay. All right, council. Well, it's your pleasure. I will read this PW 017
2021 to Sustainer EA, the Stainer Southeast Sewer Financing. So recommendation be it resolved that Council of the Township of Clearwater hereby one, receive the Stainer Southeast Sewer Financing Report for information. And item 2, direct staff to create financial agreements with benefiting developers. And item 3, direct staff to provide a bylaw outlining conditions for sewer connection fees for existing properties in the study area. So on the floor, can I have a mover and seconder, please? That'd be Councillor Broderick, seconded. Councillor Leishman. Any questions or comments on the report and on the direction so far? There are no comments. All right. I'll call the motion. All those in favor? And that motion carries. Thank you very much. Thank you, Council. Thank you, staff. Before we leave this, Mike and or Mr. CAO, would you guys be able to advise when we would be able to go to the public with this presentation on this so we can have this meeting and get some input? What's your thought on that, Mike and John?
So if I may, Your Worship, we need to reach out to Manortown first and find out where they're at with the financing. After that, we'll be able to formulate a better timeline for public input. Sometimes that negotiation takes a little back and forth, but certainly, you know, we can put together the plan based on what we've done historically and get some registered letters made up and a mail list and fine tune the infrastructure that Councillor Walker has pointed out with the sewer servicing and the other water main issue that was brought up.
All right, well, thank you. Go ahead, John.
Yep, sorry. I think what we should do is also have a snapshot of what this means for one homeowner, for example, so people can understand how it relates to somebody that's on a well and what that means for them financially over the next little while. Do a snapshot of what that would mean for one home. And it's important, some people may be watching this evening and picking this up. It's not an easy bouncing ball to track if you're a citizen watching and listening to what's happening this evening. So we have to put a lot of effort into making sure that these homeowners understand exactly how this will impact them, what the benefits are, including the new assessed values on their property, all that information to show the pros and the benefits and the cost associated with this, and how we'll have each homeowner manage that cost, I think will be extremely important.
All right, well, that's excellent. Thank you, Mr. CAO. All right, Council, nothing further on this topic. We'll move on to our next presentation. All right, good. Mike, you have a presentation about a bridge. You still there? Yeah, they are there, Mike. Hi, Mike.
Mr. Perot and Mr. Kober.
Okay, so that's going to go. Okay, I wasn't sure if you were handling that, Mike. So Dan is here. Hello, Dan. Nice to see you.
Hello, Your Worship.
All right, you've got Jeremy on board somewhere. I'm not sure if he's here. Yes, he is. So,
so we have Jeremy Kober with us tonight, Your Worship, to discuss condition of the second concession bridge down in Sunnydale Township, and some concerns that were brought up in the past and more recently with regards to its condition. And he's going to provide an outlook and possible solutions or steps that we can take moving forward.
All right, well, that's great. We're looking forward to hearing this. It is certainly in the southeast corner of beautiful Clearview Township, and it's an old structure. So, Jeremy, why don't you tell us a little bit about that amazing bridge we have on the second? You have no audio, Jeremy. Give it another test. See if we can get you hooked up.
Sorry about that.
Okay, we've got you. Go ahead.
Okay, Kayla's going to pull up the slides for us there, if she could.
Okay.
All right, so good evening, Your Worship and Council. My name is Jeremy Kober. I'm a professional engineer with RJ Burnside. Tonight's presentation is regarding the condition and the current temporary closure of the Concession 2 bridge. It's located on Concession 2 between McKinnon and Kiernan Road. down in the southeast corner of the township, close to the border with Essa Township. We've got a couple photos of the bridge there. If you want to jump over to the next slide, Kayla. So the purpose of tonight's presentation is to provide a summary of the structural condition of the bridge, identify various repair options, replacement options, identify any current use patterns, local resident property concerns, and the procedures required for closure of the bridge if that is required. Next slide, please. So the concession to bridge, it's numbered 324-01. It's located over the Mad River, approximately 3.7 kilometers east of County Road 10. The structure consists of a steel truss bridge with a timber deck with an unknown construction date. It's expected that it was constructed likely in the 1930s vintage. The structure was a sister structure to the bridge on Kernan Road, which collapsed in the mid-2000s, which resulted in the closure of the Kernan Road. The bridge span is approximately 18.2 meters. The road width over the bridge is approximately 4.2 meters, which currently restricts the use of the bridge for agricultural vehicles, just due to the width. The structure is inspected every 2 years in accordance with the Ontario regulations and the OSIM instruction manual, along with all the other bridges within Clearview Township. The structure was rehabilitated in 2011 following some damage to the deck and some of the stringers. That rehab consisted of replacing some of the steel beams under the bridge, along with replacing part of the timber decking. Following the completion of the 2018 inspection, it was recommended that a 2-ton load limit be applied to the bridge. And following the inspection last year, completed in May of 2020, it was noted that the bridge had continued to deteriorate, and a recommendation was made to the township to close the bridge. I'm going to jump to the next slide. So I'm just going to run through, just highlight a few of the main structural components of the bridge and their condition for just to give the council a brief overview of the structure itself. So the steel truss structure, the main component is the top chord, along with the verticals and diagonal components. The top chord of this bridge consists of back-to-back channels with a steel plate that is riveted onto the top of those channels, which you can see in those photos. There's also angle iron vertical and diagonal components that carry the loading from the deck up into that top chord. The top chord is generally in good condition. It's got signs of rusting and a patina on it. However, no significant areas of section loss are noted within the top chord component of the truss. I'm going to jump to the next slide, please. The bottom chord of the truss runs parallel with the road, and it acts primarily as a tension member that connects the legs of the top chord to each other. It consists of a back-to-back angle, which can be shown, which can be seen in the photo on the left-hand side. Parts of it, for example, the photo on the left in the midspan is in relatively good condition. However, as can be seen in the photo on the right-hand side, it was a 50 millimeter by 50 millimeter or 2-inch by 2-inch angle. And due to the corrosion, there are parts where there's less than 25 millimeters of that bottom chord remaining, which is a significant reduction in load capacity on that component. You can jump to the next slide, please. Underneath the girder, underneath the truss that connects the panel points is a floor beam, which can be seen in the photo on the left. The floor beam carries the load from the stringers, which is the girders that run parallel with the bridge. As can be seen in the photo on the right, there's severe corrosion of the top flange of that floor beam, which is where all the load from the stringer beams is carried into that. You can see in that photo there's some significant flaking and just delamination of that steel. It's just crumbling apart. If you want to jump to the next photo, please, or next slide. On this slide, we can see some of these stringers. They consist of steel eye girders. They rest on top of the floor beams from the previous slide and carry the timber deck over top. We've got one in the left-hand side, we have a photo of one of the beams that was replaced in 2011. So it's only 9 years old at the time of this photo, and we can see that there's significant corrosion that has been occurring on that girder. In the photo on the right-hand side, we can see one of the original stringers on this bridge, and we can see that it has completely deteriorated to the point where the bottom flange is no longer connected to the web of the girder at all, rendering it basically ineffective at carrying any load whatsoever. I did have a video of us walking under the bridge and just pointing out a few things, but in the interest of file size, we've just omitted it at this point in time. So the primary factors leading to the recommendation to close the structure in May of 2020 was the severe corrosion and section loss of the bottom cord. That angle iron performs a key structural component to the bridge. It acts primarily in tension, and if that cord was to be severed, basically there's nothing to keep the legs of the truss from just spreading out and the truss collapsing. Again, which would be a catastrophic failure of the truss. The severe corrosion and section loss on the floor beams and the stringers results in a reduced capacity of the structure and the potential to punch through the deck if those girders were to fail, or additionally a potential catastrophic failure of the bridge if one of the floor beams were to fail, which would result in whatever vehicle was traveling over it falling down into the river. So some other observations that were made about the bridge and concession 2 in general. The bridge is routinely submerged underwater during spring melts and also during large rain events. This has led to the accelerated corrosion of the stringer and floor beams, just to the repeated wetting of those elements. We all know if steel and water, as it gets wet and dried, accelerates the corrosion effects of it. Additionally, one thing to note, the structure does not have an adequate barrier system. If we did have an errant vehicle traveling along that road, this is a typical concern for any truss type structure. An errant vehicle were to collide with the truss, it could result in catastrophic failure of that bridge, just due to it being a single load path structure. Jump to the next page, please. So just a few notes on concession 2 itself. From the bridge to the east is a no winter maintenance road. During the spring melt and during large rainfall events, that section of the road is often underwater and not passable. I believe it's often temporarily closed for a good part of the year. Due to changes and siltation in the river system, there's been a significant deposition of sediment within the Mad River over the last 30 years. And talking with Steve Sage and Mike, and also Steve Riley from Burnside, in the past 20 years ago, that bridge used to be able to walk underneath it with plenty of room to spare. And now there's less than about 3 to 4 feet of clearance from the bottom of the stream to the underside of those girders. Basically, there's been 3 to 4 feet worth of sediment settled out into that river, which significantly has reduced the capacity of the Mad River in that area. That's resulted in a lot of water being, a lot of water going over concession 2 and also being carried east along the ditch, which has been cleaned out along concession 2 and over and under through the culvert on McKinnon Road and out that direction towards the Nottawasaga River, as opposed to continuing along with the Mad River and joining in further upstream or further downstream where the Mad River actually joins to the Nottawasaga. As the bridge is only 4.2 meters wide, it's too narrow for agricultural equipment use. However, we do note that the bridge has been historically used during the winter months as part of the Ontario Federation Snowmobile Club Trail Network. As far as I know, it's still being used for that up until it being closed. One property to note, or the adjacent properties that would be affected by the closure of this bridge. Immediately east of the bridge, there's a menacing wetlands, including a waterfowl observation tower. Closing of the bridge would potentially cut off access to the property during the winter months and during any significant flooding events. Typically, when the road closure barriers are set up, they're set up just beyond the bridge and just beyond the access to that property. Additionally, and I know that this has been raised in the past, there's one resident who lives on McKinnon Road who is within the Clearview Township boundary, and closure of this road would result in the resident being cut off from the rest of the township during the months where the road currently is open and passable. So temporary closure of the bridge for the purposes of safety does not require any EA process, and the temporary closure of the bridge has been completed. The township placed concrete barriers on April 1st, restricting access to the bridge and to concession 2 from McKinnon Road to the west. As far as the temporary closure, this is be considered a Schedule A item and does not require notification under the EA Act beyond just as it's a temporary measure at this point in time. One of the options for the structure would be to retire and remove the bridge from this location. Under the revised or proposed amendments to the EA Act, this would be considered a Schedule A+ item, so it would not require a full Schedule BEA. However, this specific bridge would likely be determined to have heritage, and under the proposed amendment, it is allowed to be removed. However, it would need clearance from the Ministry of Heritage, Sport, Tourism, and Culture Industries. This is a little bit of a change from how things were done in the past. Based on this, it's not quite clear what that process would look like. Basically, we would have to apply and provide, I guess, the MHSTCI with anything that they would require to their satisfaction in order to be able to remove this bridge, should that be the direction that the council would want to go with. So we'll just outline a few different options for the bridge. Current situation is that the bridge is temporarily closed. That was completed on April 1st, 2021. To remove the structure, the estimated cost for removing the structure would be approximately $75,000. That would include, or would be in addition to constructing a little bit of a turnaround area there for snowplows, garbage truck, that sort of thing. Additional, there may be costs associated with the consultation with the MHSTCI as required. Another option would be to repair the structure. This type of repair would be similar to the repair completed in 2011. Would be expected to provide another approximately 10 years worth of service life to the bridge and cost approximately $300,000. would consist of replacing those stringers that are severely deteriorated, reinforcing and replacing the floor beams and the bottom cord, and installing a more appropriate barrier across the bridge. This would not give any opportunity to increase the width of the bridge. It would still be narrow. It would actually be narrowed a little bit more than it is currently due to the addition of the barrier. So it would not allow for any increased traffic or any agricultural loads to be travel on the bridge. It would result in the possibility of increasing the load limit from the previous 2 tons back up to 10 or 15 tons, depending on a structural analysis of the structure. The third option that could be looked at is a replacement of the bridge with a larger span structure that would allow for a little bit more hydraulic capacity. Would raise the bridge above the water level to help to increase the longevity of the structure. Would cost approximately, at this point, estimated $1.1 million to get it to a lifespan of 75 years. Another alternative would be to construct a multi-cell culvert, allow flooding over the road during flood events, which is consistent with the rest of concession 2 in that area, and would allow for additional use, such as the snowmobile trail, to use it during the winter at a significantly less cost than a full replacement of the structure. So I'm going to jump to the next slide there. So at this point, I guess the township staff is looking for recommendation from council as to further study of any options or what option we would like to proceed on. So I guess with that, I'll pass it back to Mr. Mayor and to Dan for any other comments.
All right, thank you very much, Mr. Cover. It is a beautiful little part of our community down there. And it's unfortunate that the bridge is in such poor repair and has obviously deteriorated. There are going to be a lot of questions, I'm sure. If I can, gentlemen and councillors, I'd like to go to Councillor Lamers first. It's directly in his area, and Mr. Lamers has some knowledge of the specific area. So let's go to John Lamers first for comment, and then we'll go around the room. Go ahead, John Lamers.
Thank you, Worship. Yeah, it was hard to take back 20 years ago when they closed the Kernan Bridge on us. It cut off all most of the traffic, and now closing this bridge off. If we have a significant event on County Road 10, we have to go back to Sunnydale Corners or Lyle to Baxter in order to get around. We have no other route with closing these roads. So we need to keep this one open or open up Kernan Bridge again. Thank you.
That's a good comment. Perhaps you could share with us your knowledge of the second concession and the extent of flooding that happens down there, Councillor Lamers. Certainly flooding events do occur, and if Councillor Patterson is with us, I hope he would jump in. Certainly this is in the NVCA area, and this is a perfect example of how the riverbanks need to be maintained and hardened up across Ontario. That's what they're all about, is flooding. So Councillor Lamers, what's your comment on the flooding that you've observed in that part of the neighborhood?
I think I was down there last week and the road is still underwater. It's taken a long time to recede this year. Yes, we were back there last week. The new CAO and I took a tour down through there, and it was still underwater. And the bridge is scary. It's down to a 2-ton, and I wouldn't want to drive across it.
I understand.
And the snowmobiles use it all winter long. There's always traffic going down there and turning around. There's always traffic coming from both ends. The McKinnon Road, I think it is, off 90. They're turning around there, and they're turning around on the second. So people don't want to see it closed. it's a nice bypass route and it's nice down through there. And with Ducks Unlimited owning that land, they have those observation towers, which we're going to cut off. So they're going to be a little upset too, just purchasing all that land and putting those observation towers up for people to view.
Okay. I'd like to go to Dan next, and then I acknowledge McKechnie and the deputy mayor. Dan, you were going to comment on this?
Yeah, thank you, Your Worship. And just to Councillor Lamers, I appreciate the issue at a significant event were to happen on County Road 10. And there's, might remind, Jeremy brought it up in his presentation, that for a good portion of the year, that road is not travelable, if that's a word. There's no winter maintenance on that road. So if we were to have a significant winter event on County Road 10 at some point, you know, I would suggest that unless there were some significant improvements to concession 2 east of the bridge, that that would be the same case moving forward. So just thought I'd point that out.
Okay. Thanks, Dan. Stay right there for comments and questions. Councillor McKechnie's next, and then Deputy Mayor. Go ahead, Doug.
Thank you, Your Worship. I have a few questions, but I'll just limit it to one for now. So in the presentation, it said that there was one resident that would be cut off from Clearview Township if we close this bridge. But is that resident on McKinnon Road? Let me see, that would be north of concession 2?
Correct, yes.
I went down there and I had a look. I didn't see any resident that would be cut off. Everybody could make it out on McKinnon Road. I mean, there's lots of residents on McKinnon Road, and you know, I didn't see anyone that would be cut off. I just wanted that clarified.
Jeremy, they are accessible to McKinnon through Essa Township, correct, Jeremy?
Yes, from my understanding, it's been a past concern brought up. This bridge obviously has been in discussion for quite a few years with Steve Sage, and my understanding is that in Steve's previous discussions with that property owner, they were very concerned about not having access to Clearview Township from within Clearview Township as a resident.
Fair enough.
So if I may, Your Worship, then just to clarify me, I'm looking at the ward boundaries map here. Is McKinnon Road part of Clearview Township, or is it part of Essa Township?
Perhaps Dan could jump in there. Dan, you know kind of both those borders, don't you?
Yeah.
Just so everybody knows, Dan previously worked in Essa Township, so maybe you can help fill us in there.
Thank you, Your Worship. And Councillor McKechnie, the answer is it's in both. If you were to travel up McKinnon Road from County Road 90, you get to about the hydro corridor. There's a hydro corridor through there that runs east-west, and that's approximately the boundary of Essa and Clearview on McKinnon Road. So north of that hydro corridor is Clearview Township. And that resident is definitely in Clearview. Just might want to point out too that they access their mail at the west side of the bridge on second concession. That's where their mailbox resides. So that's just some notes on that.
So some of the portions they have to use a sea-doo to get from their house to where the mailbox is. Get across the water is what you're saying.
Yeah, it would be difficult. I'm not sure how they access it, but I am aware that their mailbox is there.
Okay, go ahead, Doug. Sorry to interrupt.
Okay, so basically 6 months of the year, they're either using their sea-doo or their ski-doo, or they're going around. You know, I just don't see how anyone's going to be stranded. I mean, if we did close that bridge, no one's being stranded. They can still get out to County Road 90. You know, I hear what Councillor Lamers is saying. It'd be a shame to close the bridge, but I went down there and had a look, and you know, it's an old decrepit bridge. Is there any possibility that we can keep it as a pedestrian bridge, or for ATVs or snowmobiles, or if we close it, does it have to be closed to everybody?
Dan, that's a good question to you, Dan. And or Jeremy?
Yeah, I think I'd give that one to Jeremy on the weight and the liability on that structure.
Good question. Jeremy, your comment?
Yes, so the bridge would require some repairs to be completed. Repair cost noted, the 300,000 would be associated with bringing it back up to, I think, a 10 to 15 ton load limit to permit vehicular traffic on the bridge. Converting it to a pedestrian or a snowmobile trail bridge is certainly an option and would reduce the repair requirements. However, we do note that the repairs that were completed 10 years ago now need to be repaired again. So you're, without changing the structure type and getting it up out of the water, I think the lifespan of any repairs completed are only going to last 10 to 15 years at the most. So.
Okay, thank you. I'll let someone else ask questions now. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor McKechnie. Let's go to the Deputy Mayor. You were up. You had your card up there. Go ahead.
Yeah, Councilor McKechnie asked one of the questions that I was going to ask is, so the person to the east is actually not stranded. They just cannot access Clearview from being east of the bridge. They have to go down through Esta Township and back up. So they're not actually stranded. They're just unable to come directly into Clearview. And the only comment I'd like to make is we always have to consider our heritage, and it's always an important part, and we're going to have to go through what we're going through. When I look at the cost of $75,000 to tear it down versus $300,000 to repair it, we're talking probably a $200,000 difference. It's are we going to get 10? Maybe we get 15 years out of it. Then all of a sudden the cost when you amortize it over 10 or 15 years is not that outrageous.
Okay. And then the overall condition of the actual environment there, with the condition of the river and how it sprawls out regularly, causing who knows what else, image and damage to that area. Councillor Patterson, I saw you were next, and then Councillor Broderick. Go ahead, Tom.
Yeah, the NVCA would clearly have an interest in this, what's done, because as I think everyone knows, they did a significant amount of bank stabilization on the Mad River at around the bridge, and also stream rehabilitation up towards the tower. And they see it as a demonstration site as well. I think they should be engaged, obviously, for this flood modeling. They may have some data that would help, current data that would help determine what's feasible there. It's a tough one. I can't see us getting let off for. I don't like the 10-year solution to repair. We saw the 10-year-old beam in the picture, and right now I think it's hard to predict what the right thing is to be done there unless we do some flood modeling. So I think Dan, has the NVCA engineering group, have they been contacted to see what their first impressions are in terms of what the MAD's going to be doing over the next few years there?
Dan or Jeremy? Dan?
Jeremy.
Yeah, at this point, the NVCA has not been contacted. Just basically what's been completed so far is just the temporary closure of the bridge from a safety point of view. So.
Okay, they would be, the NVCA would be interested in, if it was converted at least to a pedestrian area, those interested in the wetlands. However, that would probably involve building some kind of a parking facility to allow the public to come in. So, I mean, there's a bunch of unknowns in this as well. So,
yep.
I can bring it to the attention of the NVCA as, unofficially, if you like, but I think we should be contacting Chris or Doug, Doug Hevener, for example, to let them know that we are considering this and get their first impressions.
All right, Councillor Patterson, I'd leave that with the staff through Dan Perot, our engineering firm, to make that contact, and you can get back to us when we have a firm decision that we have to make on this. Did I see another card from Councillor Broderick? Is that right, John? And then Councillor Denis. Mr. Broderick, go ahead.
Thank you, Your Worship. I've got a few questions on this. What's the total length of the flooding area on the road itself? Does anybody have an answer to that?
I have that for you.
Dan,
in
or
one
even
second.
Councillor Lamers. Dan?
Through your worship, to Councillor Broderick, I would suggest that, for a good portion of the year, almost right to the east side of the bridge, all the way to the second, or to McKinnon Road is underwater. Parts of the year, parts of the springtime, even McKinnon Road is underwater. I've witnessed that as well, that during spring melt, that road, McKinnon Road, also floods over.
Can you put that into an actual distance for me, Dan?
It's approximately 600 meters, Councillor Broderick.
Thank you. Okay. The Ducks Unlimited, if we're without or with the bridge closed, they don't have any access to their viewing station. Is that correct?
Through your worship, that would be correct. They wouldn't have access from the west side. Assuming at some point in time the second concession becomes dry, they would have access from the east. But currently, I know I've spoke with the owner of the last property. So the first property west, I had a discussion with her just late last week, and she's advised me that people that are accessing that piece of property are parking on the second concession. So not directly in front of her driveway, but because the road is quite narrow there, and the water is close to the road on both sides in those ditches, that makes the road quite narrow at times when people are parking there. So
how many landowners in total are affected by the closure of the bridge?
Another one for Dan or Jeremy.
Through your worship, that's a good question. I think one home anyway, as we had referenced, and I believe there is one other landowner on the south side. I'm not sure. I'm not clear whether that's I think the Ducks Unlimited property is on the north side of the second concession. I think there's a farm on the south side that I'm not sure is farmable, but
Councillor
I would
Lamers,
have to get back to you.
Councillor Lamers, go ahead.
Yeah, Ducks Unlimited on both sides of the road, north and south side. It's all waterfowl now. And there's about 600 meters from the bridge to McKinnon Road that's underwater for 2 months of the year. The other 6 months it's drivable, and then the snow hits where it's not. And there's one landowner on McKinnon Road that lives in Clearview Township that can go out McKinnon Road to Asa. But is there, Dan, an agreement between Clearview and Asa? Because I thought Clearview went right out County Road 10 through Angus up 90 on the north side of the road, and Asa owned the south side of the road. And there was an agreement years ago made that Asa would look after the first kilometer north of 10 and 90 for Clearview.
Dan, what do you know about that? I'm interested too.
Through your worship, my knowledge, the agreement, I don't think it's a formal agreement. I think it's an understanding that Essa Township maintains McKinnon Road all the way to the end. And I don't believe we reciprocate any plowing or maintenance for them in the winter. We do our own grading and summertime maintenance, I call it, on our portion of McKinnon Road, but they do the winter portion, the winter maintenance portion.
Okay. Thank you very much. Mr. Broderick, you had more you wanted to ask?
I do.
And then I have Councillor Leishman. I'm looking for anybody else. Go ahead, John Broderick.
Seeing how this is a snowmobile trail, I'm curious. I've been down it, but I don't have the figures for winter traffic. I was wondering if somebody had some idea of that, or perhaps Councillor Lamers may have an idea about what kind of traffic we've got there. And I hate to. The other part of it is that if we're going to do something with the bridge, it seems fairly obvious. It's got to be raised. It's the moisture that's killing the bridge. And I've built enough trail bridges, snowmobile trail bridges and ATV bridges to know you got to get them out of the water. So we'd have to look at that. But if somebody could give me an idea of what kind of traffic we get there in the wintertime.
Dan, is there any traffic on that road in the winter?
Oh, I'm talking about typically snowmobile traffic. I wouldn't expect there to be vehicular traffic in the wintertime, but that's part of our infrastructure. We need to have an idea what we're dealing with in terms of disruption moving forward.
Yeah, Jeremy, you're
Thanks, Councillor. So just so you guys are aware, I do live just outside New Lowell on County Road 10, so I'm local to this area as well. From my understanding, the snowmobile trail in that area, it's kind of a dead end for majority of the snowmobile season. The snowmobile trail runs along Concession 2, and then it heads to the south on McKinnon up towards the No Frills, so that the snowmobiles can access the gas station there. It also travels north on McKinnon back into the swamp, where it goes along past the abandoned farm that's back there, and actually travels across another steel truss bridge that goes over top of the Nottawasaga River and then comes back up towards County Road 90 on the other side of the Nottawasaga River. That section of trail is one of the last sections that opens in our area. Basically, they need enough cold weather to freeze up the swamps that the groomer can get through, and enough snow. There's they need to push quite a large amount of snow in up against that bridge in order to access it. It's been whether scoured out or just material been removed around that bridge in the past. There's many years where that section of the trail over the bridge does not get opened. From my house, I can see across the road to where the snowmobile trail, that section where it crosses, and I would say it's not significantly used, especially until that section of the trail is open. Otherwise, it's just basically a dead end that doesn't go anywhere. So, when we get enough cold weather and enough snow to open that section, it does see a slight uptick in use, but it's not a significantly popular route, I would say. I don't have any hard numbers to back that up, but that's just been my observation as a resident that lives nearby. So,
thank you.
Go to 11. I appreciate that, Jeremy. Thank you.
I might suggest, Your Worship. I can contact I think it's the Barrie Snowmobile Club. I think that operates or runs that trail system through there, and I could certainly contact them to see if they have any numbers and report back to council if you wish.
You're right, Dan. It is the Barrie Snowmobile Club that would operate that section.
Yeah.
Okay. All right.
That would be appreciated. Thank you.
I'm sure we're going to get a report back from Dan on this eventually, and Jeremy will be a big part of that report too. All right, Councillor Deneen, then Leishman, then McKechnie. Go ahead.
Thank you. Through your worship to Jeremy. Jeremy, at the end of you talking about the options, you said something about culvert and tiles or something. Can you address that again? There was something at the end and it was replaced and widened, and then you talked about culverts and flood and tiles.
Sure, I did kind of jump over that quickly. So another option that could be considered there would be to basically make the crossing similar to the rest of concession 2. So instead of putting in a bridge, we could put in some culvert structures, which would allow the road to flood, would allow it to flood over top of the bridge crossing. Over top of the culverts would allow it to be flooded out while the rest of the road is being flooded out. It would restrict access to the Ducks Unlimited properties. However, it would kind of make the crossing similar to the rest of the road, and allow access for the rest of the year with a minimal capital expenditure.
Yeah, that's what I was wondering more about, something like that. Living over this side, we have significant ditches on the 10th concession. And a lot of those residents have had to put in huge cement culverts, huge cement ones. And I'm looking at the bridge, and the first thing I noticed was how low it was to the water. But a culvert like that with tiles that would drain, like you guys know better than I, but would that not be sufficient? You say it washes out on both sides of the bridge anyway, and it would be something we'd have to just remedy every spring regardless. It's just a thought anyway, something like that, that wouldn't float down the river if it was, yeah. That's all.
Yeah, in similar cases where we've done, typically more in a farm drainage type situations where, a farmer needs access to a field. Obviously, they're not going through when it's flooding, where you would put in the culverts and then kind of do a concrete encapsulation on the embankment to protect it, so that it would allow water to run over top of it during flooding, but would not get eroded during the rest of the year.
Yeah, that sounds interesting, because that could always be still accessed. They would still be able to access it. They'd still have issues in the spring and everything, but it would allow some access, and it would be a whole lot easier to repair that than it would be a bridge every year. That's just my thoughts. Thanks.
Yeah, any sort of option like that would require significant flood studies in consultation with the NVCA, as we may be changing the flood characteristics of that area. But
any bridge or anything would be, I'm sure, and especially if it's fish habitat, it would just be, yeah. But again, I've said before, the 10th line is fish habitat too, and we get quite a bit of water flowing through there in the spring.
Yep.
Thanks. Thank you.
All right, thank you very much, Councillor. Councillor Leishman is next.
Thank you. I'm quite familiar with this, because actually this was on one of our tours when I was on the NVCA years ago. I think it was about 3 or 4 years ago. And I thought the bridge at the time was scary enough then. So I'm kind of glad we temporarily closed it, but I would like to permanently close it. I really don't think we should have a road there for cars. I remember being at town halls in the first term, and the people that live on McKinnon were always at those meetings and complaining about the water bitterly. But you have to remember where this is. This is the Mincing wetland, and this water is water, and it's going to be there pretty much most of the year. It does dry out in the summer, yes. But even in the spring, when we get lots of rain, you're going to have it underwater. And I'm thinking culverts, it might be a bit tricky. So needless to say, no matter what we do, we have to talk to the MVCA and the Heritage about this bridge. Personally, this is just an idea, if we took it out, I would like to see a pedestrian or snowmobile or ATV bridge put back in. If you put another bridge in that will hold a car, people will go on it with their cars or their trucks or whatever. But I don't believe that it's a good road for anybody. And even when we were back there on that trip, all the ditches, all the sides, the water was right up to the road. And this was pretty much summer when we went. So it was not, it's not a very good area for anybody to be living, for sure. And I think Ducks Unlimited can still get there from McKinnon. I don't think they're cut off, and I don't think they're cut off from the observation towers. Anyway, my suggestion would be to close it, take it out, and put in a pedestrian bridge.
All right, thank you, Councillor. Let's see, I hope that our staff are making notes on these, because I expect that we'll probably hear about all this in the report, Dan. Councillor McKechnie is next. Go ahead, Doug.
Thank you, Your Worship. So it's been closed for a year now. Have there been any issues in the last year that it's been closed? What issues have we run into? Any?
Dan, you got any issues that have come up from road management or service provision?
To Your Worship, to Councillor McKechnie. So we just, I would say that it was somewhat closed with some wooden horses. It's what typically has been done in the past, but it was just this past April that Jeremy indicated in 2021 that we put up, I would say, more permanent concrete structures to close it off. So I did hear from the representative of the landowner. I believe it's the daughter of the couple that lives up there at the end of McKinnon Road, and as well as the property owner directly west of the bridge, just with regards to some parking concerns that they had. Other than that, those are the only two calls that I've received from that closure.
Councillor McKechnie,
okay, no, thank you very much, Dan. Yeah, I can understand that, the parking thing. When I went and had a look, I mean, I parked in front of the house, so I didn't see any other area there to park. I sort of thought that if we did close it and just had it as a footbridge or a bridge for ATVs or whatever, there would have to be a little parking area for people to park, so that they wouldn't be annoying the people in the house immediately to the west of the bridge. But anyway, thanks very much for your comments. And I'm not sure what I think. It's a lot of money for a single lane bridge that's only open or serves a purpose for 6 months of the year. But on the other hand, you know, I don't like closing roads either. So anyway, I'll wait until I read Dan's report and I'll make my decision then. Thank you.
Thank you very much for that. It's exactly what I'm sure we're all patiently waiting for. If there's nothing further, anybody else? Oh, sorry, Councillor Lamers. Yes, again.
Yes, Dan or staff needs to get in contact with the NVCA and Ducks Unlimited and the Snowmobile Club and get all their input on this. See what they would like.
Absolutely. I expect that Dan and Jeremy and or other staff will be working on that very thing to bring us a report with a couple of options that we can look at. I think Jeremy's report here tonight, his presentation, certainly gave us something to think about in regards to the actual conditions and the actual remediation that could be done, and the basically justifying why our road superintendent, as a road authority, exercise his authority to bring safety to our residents by clearly blocking the bridge, that you cannot cross it right now. And so I salute Dan for doing said. Anyway, Dan, have you got anything you'd like to wrap this up, either yourself or Jeremy, and then we'll move on?
No, Your Worship, I just wanted to say that yes, it is staff's intention in the near future here to bring a report to council with some options and a recommendation. After, as Councilor Lamers has suggested, that we consult with all interested parties, and perhaps we can even make contact with the property owner on McKinnon Road as well to see how they feel about the possible closure, or the possible restriction to pedestrian, the different options. So we can certainly do that, and that is our intention. Just wanted to make council aware that road for public interest is essentially closed at the bridge until a solution or an option is brought forward.
As a little technical item, Dan, can you advise, have you made that change on 511 regarding the road tools that are available for GPS mapping? Maybe you could do that sooner than later, which helps to mitigate people moving their way around our community using their little GPSs. Maybe you could do that. And the other thing, I know in your report, you've obviously got a few agencies now you want to reach out and touch and have a conversation with. Can I ask either yourself or even the CAO, could you reach out to Canada Post in regards to the placement of this mailbox, which is now highly inconvenient for that person? We could arrange something with Canada Post to change that mailbox posting and help that resident out in the interim. I think that would be a wise thing that we could do. So just ask if that's part of your report. That'd be helpful. All right, council, is there anything further on this? Jeremy, thank you very much for all your work on this. I'm sure it's interesting for you too, being a local resident, to have a close look at that structure. So thank you for your input.
Thank you, everyone. And I believe that the video of us going underneath the bridge was sent to Brenda and to Kayla. So if any of you are interested in seeing that without actually putting on the chest waders and going underneath the bridge, you're welcome to contact them. They may be able to provide that video link to you. So
perhaps what we'll do is we'll consult with Brenda and our communication staff, and maybe we'll just post it up on our little YouTube site so we'll have an opportunity to see it there. All right, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you all. Thank you very much. All right, thank you, Dan. And you got some writing to do. Create a nice report. Okay, members of council, we're going to move on from item number 5. So I'll move to item number 6, which is public meetings. There are none tonight. And so item number 7 is approval of the minutes of our council meeting. Council, recommendation be it resolved, the council of the township hereby approve the minutes of the April the 12th, 2021 council meeting as presented. Can I have a mover and seconder on the minutes, please? Deputy Mayor and Councillor Deneen. Thank you. Any questions? Seeing none, I'll call the motion. All those in favor? And that carries. Minutes approved. Business arising from the minutes. Has anybody got any business arising from the minutes? Seeing none. Moving on. Communications from the mayor. Members of council, I had nothing that actually came in as far as any paperwork or communications from the mayor. I did have a couple of small items which I just want to mention. If I could ask the CAO and Rory, our fire chief, to join us here for a moment. I would like to get Rory, are you there? I think you're still with us. There he is. Hello, Chief. Mr. CAO, Mr. Fire Chief, when I came into my office, I had a couple of things on my desk that we need to arrange to have a meeting, perhaps a social distancing meeting with Fire Chief Rory Payment and Firefighter Warren Darling. I understand that we have some awards to hand out to these two firefighters. And so, Mr. CAO, we need to arrange a socially distant opportunity to present these two gentlemen with their service medals of longstanding service. So let's perhaps arrange that, and I'll wish my congratulations to the chief since he's here with us today. Thank you.
Thank you, Your Worship.
Okay, so we'll arrange to do that sooner than later. That's always a nice thing to have. Members of council, I have nothing further to share at this time, other than I obviously are paying attention to the Simcoe County District Health Unit and our ongoing battle with COVID-19. I know that the vaccination program is rolling out. It's not really part of our responsibilities in municipal world, but I would encourage the public to make their bookings, reach out, find a way to get yourself into a a vaccine. I know that many members of the community have already done that, and I think it will be the best step forward for us to do that. So, I'll just put my pitch in there that I think it's important for us all to try to find our way to get a vaccine and be supportive of our community by protecting our community and our families. So, good luck there, folks. I hope you can get to that. I also want to mention too that it's difficult. Our hospitals are being swamped with a lot of activity for sure. We may or may not have any COVID cases right in our Collingwood General Marine Hospital, but I can assure you that there have been many transfers back into our Collingwood Hospital of patients that are in serious condition but may not be COVID related as a result of other hospitals in the area wanting to move patients that are non-COVID related to our hospital. So certainly our thoughts go out to the people who work in the healthcare sector at this time, and they're certainly heroes every day. So that's quickly an update from the mayor's desk. I'll go to item number 10 right now, which is our county reports. Deputy Mayor Burton, did you want to speak on something on here? I think you had something you were going to mention. Go ahead, Barry.
Yes, a couple of things from County Council, Your Worship. Thank you so much. I'd just like to mention, we have two reports that are already attached. The one is the bi-weekly leaf collection, which started April 12th and continues until May 31st. There is a schedule there is when you're coming around and picking them up for those who are concerned. Plus the initiative that the County Council has taken for the homeless initiative as a result of COVID. The homeless is a real issue. So they've brought out this motel initiative where they're letting homeless people stay in motels, and the county is covering the cost, but the health unit is actually supporting that and feel it's the best way to keep homeless people isolated rather than gathering together. So it seems to be something that's working. I'd like to say that also on Thursday of last week, that the county had its LTC long-term care appreciation for volunteers, which I attended virtually, of course, but just to mention all the work that our volunteers do in our communities for our long-term care residents and staff. It's unbelievable. Even through COVID, I believe they had put in something like, and I could be wrong, but it was like over 400 volunteer hours into their long-term care, even during COVID. So that was pretty remarkable of that. And the other thing that passed that committee of the whole at our last meeting was, as you recall, the Committee of Adjustment passed a severance on County Road 91 that they passed, and the county staff filed an appeal, an LPAT appeal against it. So I brought forth a motion at Committee of the Whole, County Council, to withdraw the appeal and support the Committee of Adjustment's decision, which happened. So County Council, Committee of the Whole certainly supported our decision at the Committee of the Whole, and it will be ratified tomorrow, or at tomorrow's meeting, which I don't suspect will create any problems or anything. I'm sure it'll be ratified. And that's it for county.
Thank you very much, Deputy Mayor. Yes, it was a good debate, wasn't it, at our Committee of the Whole discussion in regards to the County Road 91 severance there, just on the east side of Duntrum. And I was very, very pleased to see members of County Council continue to support us at Clearview, and that was very, very reassuring. And so that's good. That's good. It was the right decision, and I'm glad we moved forward with it.
If I may add to Your Worship, but by no means do we take away any of the the hard work and the great work that our planning department and the county's planning department. They do an amazing job. They're on top of everything. Just sometimes things don't quite fit the quite fit the bill, sort of, and there's I would say there's always the exception to the rule, but they're very rare, and this was one of those rare occasions.
Well, Barry, I look at it like it was the Committee of Adjustment, which is exactly what the Committee of Adjustment is there for, to take a look at the exceptions and to take a look at those properties that have, perhaps unusual circumstances, like this one certainly did. And so I'm glad that, first of all, that our Committee of Adjustment at Clearview made a decision, and that I'm further happy that our council supported that. And then I'm also very happy that the Committee of the Whole at the County of Simcoe then further supported our volunteers from our Committee of Adjustment. So I think it worked out right. So thank you for that. Members of Council, you got any questions in regards to county reports and information? Seeing none, I will call the motion. I have a motion here. The recommendation be it resolved that Council of the Township of Clearview hereby receive county reports for information. Mover and seconder on that motion, please. Let me see. Councillor Lamers and Councillor Walker. All those in favor? And that carries. Thank you. All right, Council. Item number 11 is in our ward reports. So I'm going to start in reverse order. Normally I start at the top. Today I'm starting right on the bottom line of my screen. Councillor McKechnie, you're up first, followed by Councillor Patterson. Councillor McKechnie.
Thank you, Your Worship. I'm going to keep it short and sweet in the interest of time. I attended several meetings, and thank goodness for Zoom and YouTube and everything. It's nice to be able to monitor a number of the other hall meetings and Station on the Green meeting. That was exciting. But basically, the most notable thing that I did was I attended the cannabis meeting, or webinar, I should say, on April the 20th. I know that Mayor Burton, our Director of Planning, was there. Several other people from the community attended it as well. And it was a very good webinar, and I learned quite a bit. So anyway, thank you very much.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Patterson is next, and then the Deputy Mayor. Go ahead, Tom.
Yeah, the one meeting of note was the NVCA board meeting, and the decision relative to Clearview was with respect to the NVCA conservation, the New Lowell conservation area, and there was a bit of a debate in terms of whether or not it was something, an expense that that the NVCA should incur. However, the board pretty strongly supported $35,000 to remove hazardous trees in the campground area. And for those in council, I think are familiar with the land, know that the property is leased by the NVCA to a family that takes care of the operation of the campground. And they often foot the bill to do a lot of maintenance to the property. In this case, the NVCA, out of reserves, thought it was appropriate to spend the $35,000 and do a pretty extensive removal of some hazardous trees there. So that's my report.
All right, thank you very much, Councillor. Deputy Mayor Burton, back to you again.
I think I pretty well covered everything. Other than I did attend the meeting for the Station on the Green meeting, and the numerous conversations that I have with the mayor and other members of council.
All right, thank you, Barry. Councillor Walker, you're next, and then Councillor Lamers. Go ahead, Bob.
Thank you, Your Worship. Not a whole lot to report other than I've shopped locally at the curbside. I have made about 3 trips as a chauffeur to Sperling Drive in Barrie for people for their shots. I've got a few more trips to Sperling, and tomorrow I get my shot at Wasaga Beach. The other thing I want to say is that the Stainer Lions Club will be having a Mustang car draw this year. They're going to go back. It will be strictly online and through YouTube and flyers. And I don't know whether you can see that or not. It's called Grabber Yellow.
Yeah.
And 21, that's the one they got for this year. So there's more information coming out on that shortly. Other than that, stay safe, folks. Get your vaccination and try and support your their local stores as best you can, because they certainly need our help.
Absolutely, Councillor Walker. Good luck, and thank you for acknowledging the getting the vaccinations. That's important. Good job. All right, Councillor Lamers, you're next, and then Councillor Leishman.
Thank you, Worship. April 14th, I had a meeting with the new CAO, John Ferguson. We took a tour around the south end, southwest corner of the township here. We had a nice chat with what's going on around down here, socially distanced. On the 15th, I had a meeting with a couple of families in New Lowell regarding water issues in their yards. And then, thanks to Dan and Joel. After we passed the four-way stop, they had it up by the end of the week. And up to now, I have had nothing but positive feedback. I haven't had one complaint yet. So thanks to the crews for getting that up. And I was up on 91 a couple days last week. And a lot of the trucks were chirping on the CBs about having to slow down for the 60 signs, but the cars were all passing them. And the OPP have been sitting on that little side street there. And in a couple of hours, they filled their books and drove away. And she did that for 2 or 3 days. All cars going through, no trucks. So that's good to see. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Lamers. Obviously, there's a bit of a fishing hole there for the OPP officers. Okay, thank you. Councillor Leishman is next, and then Councillor Broderick.
Oh, thank you. I was at the library meeting last week. We have a new little ditty in the library called a press reader, which means that you can access any magazine in Canada and all the newspapers, and that's absolutely free to you if you're a member of the library. So it saves you a little money because, you know, actually magazines are almost $6 to $10 these days. So don't buy them, go to the library. Or you can't go to the library yet, but you soon will, hopefully. Also went to the chamber meeting, and we have a new lacrosse team in town. It's called the Clearview Crushers, and they are a senior B loop, which is age 21 and up. And I can't imagine what that looks like because I saw the little kids playing lacrosse and it just looked brutal to me. So you got some adults hitting each other. I don't know. Anyway, not my game, but it's interesting to watch. So there you go. I wish them all the luck. Councillor Deneen and I are going to attend an event, a virtual event for more women, under the auspice of More Women to Run, which is we're going to learn how to tell other women how to run for council. So maybe you'll have a few more women here next year, or not next year, maybe next term. You definitely won't see me, just so you know. Okay, so other than that, I'm pretty good. Got my shot last week. Michael's had his now. So we're covered in this house. My family is all booked for theirs, and I'm so happy because soon we'll actually have a lovely get together. Wouldn't it be nice? Anyway, thanks.
Thank you, Connie, and I appreciate your frankness, and I'm glad you're feeling really well. I see Councillor Lamers, you raised your hand again. Did I miss something for you there?
Yeah, I just wanted, Connie, what was that first thing, website for the library?
Press Reader, I think is.
It's called Press Reader. And you can access it virtually, well, through your computer to the library, so you can get it. But yeah, you just can't go into our library and use their computers right now.
No, we're a card holder, so that's why I was wondering if we can get it online.
Yes, you can.
As a member, yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
And I get my needle next Tuesday.
Oh, do you? Good for you. Okay, good for you. All right, thank you, John. Thank you, Connie. Over to John Broderick, and then Councillor Denis.
Thank you, Your Worship. April the 13th, I attended the Accessibility Advisory Committee meeting. On the 20th, I also attended the Up and Smoke webinar regarding cannabis operations. Also on April the 20th, attended the library board meeting And the 21st, the Clearview Chamber of Commerce meeting. And that is it for me.
All right, thank you, John. Nice to see you. And Councillor Janine, you're next.
Okay, so Connie and I also have a regional housing subcommittee meeting on May the 4th that we have to attend. We had an Ottawa Hall meeting on April 15th, and we talked about the Small Halls Festival and a little bit about the OADA renovation requirements and what we're going to do about that. I just wanted to take a minute and just mention that one of our local residents, Steve Holmes, runs the Door Knock Tap and Grill. Steve had an accident at work and he's in hospital. His wife, Leslie, just wants us all to keep him in our thoughts and hope for him to come home. The restaurant staff, they've asked us just to support the family and Steve and Leslie by ordering out, takeout. Just that's what they're asking for support. So if you're over this way or planning on going anywhere, give the Door Knock Tap and Grill a call and maybe just order a sandwich or something, and they've got soup and everything else to go. So just keep them in our thoughts and hope for the best for them. Thanks. That's it for me.
All right, thank you, Councillor Janine. You're absolutely right. Steve Holmes is a great leader in our community around the Ottawa area, and he and the people around the Door Knock have done some great fundraisers for the Ottawa School, for the hall. They've done lots of great things in our community. So we certainly wish him only the best, and it's a great spot. By the way, the Door Knock burger, really good. So help yourself. Okay, thank you, members of council. I got two items I want to mention. As you know, council, I'm a member of the, representing Clearview, I'm a member of the Physician Recruitment and Retention Committee, which is operated through the Town of Blue Mountains. We're a group of people representing Collingwood, Grey Highlands, Meaford, Town of Blue Mountains, and Clearview Township. And our focus is to bring some attention to the need for physician recruitment and retention, obviously. And so there is a survey that is available. We're looking for the residents to chip in some of their comments and give us some understanding because our communities are all growing. We're having a great deal of pressure put on our physicians. We have had some physicians, believe it or not, just in the last year have retired, and other physicians have come in to take over those practices. So we're doing a little bit of survey work as a committee through our communications team at Clearview. We've published the information on our website. There's a link basically to go and take the survey. So I'm asking people to take a minute and help us fill in some information about the difficult topic of physician recruitment. You know, we can always say there's never enough physicians, never enough doctors up here, and you know, doctors have to retire one time eventually. So we want to do what we can to you know, keep those practices running. So please fill out the survey. It's available at clearview.ca. I want to mention that I have had the opportunity to have my first AstraZeneca vaccine. I took it last Tuesday. I had no reaction. And, you know, I had perhaps 24 hours later, I had maybe about 2 or 3 hours there. I didn't feel right, but I could have maybe had some food poisoning or something. I don't know. But nevertheless, I got to tell you, no problem at all. More than happy to do my part, and very, very grateful to be able to get the vaccine. So I would hope that everybody, again, like I said, sign up. Now, Mr. CAO, if I could at this time, I'd like to ask Terry to join us for a minute, because I had a question asked to me about Terry. Are you here? Terry Vachon. Hi, Terry. Terry, can you help us out, give us an understanding about, you know, our park facilities are closed as a direction from the province. So parks facilities are closed, but people can still access our trails, which go through our park. So I wondered if you could just sort of help clarify that for me a little bit, Terry. There's been a couple of questions asked of me. Mr. Vachon?
Thank you, Your Worship. I think you kind of nailed it there. I mean, yeah, the trails are, you have access to them. We're asking that people don't gather or congregate on our trails, just use them as a means to get from point A to point B. But yeah, so I mean, unless there's any issues that are out there, we're pretty much, the trails are, they can be accessed by the public.
Right. So Terry, our staff are busy working in our park properties and getting there is some grass being cut, that's for sure. It's starting, sure. But so our staff are busy doing that type of work as well as preparing some of the facilities. They may be preparing the facilities, but the facilities are not open. Specifically, the ball fields are not open. Is that correct?
That is correct, Your Worship.
So we do not want people to be using our baseball facilities, and do not misread the fact that our staff are actually preparing the facility, because it's the right time of year to do it. You just can't go out and use the facility right now as directed by the province. So I just want to make sure that there was some clarity on that. And Terry, I've asked you about this before. Are we still, unfortunately, seeing a lot of garbage appearing in our parks? Is that still occurring during this pandemic?
Yes, thank you, Your Worship. Yes, unfortunately, garbage is being thrown out, vehicles, windows, whatnot. We are tasked in picking all the garbage up as much as we possibly can. Sometimes you just can't keep up, especially in heavy traffic, heavy in our parks. The Eco Park used to be a real happening place for garbage, but we think with the increase of volunteers that have been using the Eco Park and the community garden, that it has controlled itself somewhat. And we're also seeing a big influx of garbage in our downtown core. Our public garbages just can't keep up. But our beautification crew just got hired. Some of them started last week. Some of them are starting this week. I would anticipate in the next couple of weeks, with the extra seasonal staff and the extra seasonal assistants that we have, we should be able to keep on top of the garbage throughout Clearview.
All right. Okay, Terry, I know it puts a lot of pressure on the recreation department, this pandemic, and because it changes so quickly, and then you have to be prepared for changes to occur, and you also have to be prepared for when the restrictions are reduced and we can open again. So I would hope that the public understand that this is they're doing the best we can, considering all the regulations that we have, and we also, as a community, are also making sure that we want to protect those employees from contracting COVID as well. So it's not as easy as it appears sometimes. That's all I'm putting out there, Terry.
Yeah, thank you, Your Worship. And if I could take this quick time just to remind council that the trail between Collingwood and Stayner, the former rail trail,
yes,
that is presently owned by Simcoe County. We being Clearview Township, used to maintain and hire a contractor to do that for us, but starting approximately 3 years ago, that's Simcoe County's trail. A lot of times the public feels or thinks that it's Clearview's trail because it's in our township, but it's actually Simcoe County's trail, and they hire a contractor to maintain that specific trail.
Okay. All right. Thanks, Terry. Thanks for stepping in here for a minute. I just want to clarify that. So, all right, council. Thank you. We've got through that section of our agenda. We've got all of our various department reports to get through. So it's 8:25. Let's see how we do. Okay, council, item number 12, community services, our building department annual fee report for 2020. So Scott is here. I'm going to read it, put a mover and seconder, and then we'll let Scott report. Recommendation be it resolved, the council of the township of Clearview hereby one, receive CS 016-2021. It's the building department annual fee report regarding 2020 for information. So a mover and seconder on the floor. Where are we at? Broderick and Walker. Thank you. And Mr. McLeod, nice to see you again. Can you outline any information in this report that you'd like to highlight?
Yes, Your Worship. Thank you. So this is an annual report that the municipality or the building department must report on. It's a requirement under the Building Code Act. And essentially the requirement is to report essentially the revenue for the year, and outline what the direct costs and the indirect costs are for the operation of the building department. And so this year's report outlines that we ended up with a surplus this past year, a minor surplus compared to the previous 2 or 3 years, but nonetheless still surplus. 118,000 was the surplus, and of course that surplus goes to our reserves, and so our reserves are just sitting at about $1,051,000 is where the current reserve is showing. And so again, it's just to report where that reserve fund is at and what our ongoing indirect and direct costs are, and how that is running relative to our revenue. I certainly entertain any questions that council may have.
Excellent. Thank you, Scott. Any members of council with any questions to our chief building official? You're getting off easy this time. Thank you, Scott, for your report. All right, members of council, you've heard the motion. I've read it. We've got a mover and seconder. Is there anything further? Seeing none, I'll call the motion. All those in favor? And that motion carries. Thank you very much. Scott, our next report is CS 021, 2021, Building Department Activities for January through March. Recommendation be it resolved, the Council of the Township of Clearview hereby one, receive CS 021, 2021. It's the 2021 Building Department Activities for January through March 2021 report for information. Mover and seconder on the floor, please. Where are we at? Deputy Mayor Burton and Councillor Deneen. Deputy Mayor, Councillor Deneen. Scott, anything you want to add to this report?
Yes, Your Worship. Thank you again. Again, this report just sort of outlines what the activities have been for the last 3 months. It certainly illustrates that we're off to a strong start in 2021, despite the pandemic situation. There's certainly a lot of interest in new housing and renovations occurring. Pools are off the charts in terms of the number of pool applications that we're receiving. But again, the report does illustrate the strength of the past 3 months. The other thing I sort of wanted to touch on was sort of the provincial restrictions. That certainly has played a significant role in the past 3 months. We started in January with the restrictions in place and limiting construction activities and inspections. And so the building department had to become aware of that, work with our industry partners to respect those restrictions. Those were in effect for essentially January and February, and then lifted. And of course, now we are working under the current provincial restrictions. The primary area of construction that's impacted currently is industrial and commercial. Residential projects are fully open and most agricultural for the most part. But there are certainly industrial and commercial projects that have been impacted. But in terms of new permit applications, we continue to be able to review all applications, and those that are restricted, essentially we're able to prepare them in preparation for the lifting of the restrictions. We continue to work on the CityView software project. We've moved ahead with it in the last couple months in terms of approving our scope review. So they're in the build phase of it. It's anticipated that in June we will actually go into a test mode. So staff, certain members of staff within the building, planning and bylaw departments will be working in a test environment with the software. Then we'll learn some things from that test environment. There'll be, some reconfiguring of that, and it looks like that the best time for us to go live will be late summer, early September is the current expected date for that. So it has been moving along well. Septic re-inspections program, we are moving forward with that now. Notifications have gone out and are going out to property owners. But in doing so, we certainly recognize that the property owners that we have been reaching out to through our notices are certainly going to have some questions and around the COVID-19 restrictions and stuff like that. And we're certainly prepared to work with them and address those. And that's pretty much sums up the activities report. And I, again, certainly am available if there's any questions of council.
Any members of council with a question? I see Councillor McKechnie. Go ahead, Councillor McKechnie.
Thank you, Your Worship, through you to Scott. Scott, you and I had a little email exchange today regarding the former Hennessy garage, and you explained that the fence around that garage couldn't be moved because that work in that garage had stopped because it's deemed non-essential because it's a commercial building. So I pulled up the the government province of Ontario website, and I'm looking at essential construction. And I have to admit, I'm pretty confused with it. So I have a question for you. Who determines, who interprets this? Is this something that you interpret, or is it the province interprets it? It's not very well laid out. As a matter of fact, I talked to a representative from the province today, and they couldn't even give me an answer. And secondly, my concern is, and this once again, this fence, we've created a hazardous situation, or we're letting a hazardous situation occur because we are adhering to the rules for the pandemic. By not, so the way that I understand it is that we're not going to do anything about getting this fence moved because the building department has determined that the commercial building there, the garage, they can't do any work on it. So now we have a hazardous situation. So anyway, what I'm wondering is who interprets the what is deemed essential and commercial, and is there any flexibility there? Can our building department have any flexibility so that we can maybe remedy this hazardous situation? And I think I'm putting you on the spot here, but
that's a very good question, and I look forward to Mr. McLeod's answer. Go ahead, Scott.
Thank you. So first of all, thank you for recognizing that the provincial regulation around COVID-19 is far from clear. And that's the challenge that we all are working with and continue to work with. And first of all, I do not, my email to you is just to let you know that the fact that the builder isn't in there working on the building is probably because of their respecting, they may not be intending to move forward right now, I don't know. But it was not to suggest that the fence couldn't be dealt with. It was just to acknowledge that the contractor actually couldn't work on the actual structure. So my involvement in this situation is the issuance of the building permit and the restrictions under the building code. In terms of the fence being on township land, that's something that's being managed through the Public Works Department and through the bylaw officer. So I'm not really involved in the fence component of it. But what I can certainly tell you is that, yes, commercial properties, we have to make a determination as a building department where we can send our inspectors to make sure that we are respecting the provincial restrictions. So we, as the building department, have to make a determination what projects are impacted by the provincial restrictions. We do not stop anyone. If someone wants to go ahead and continue building contrary to the provincial restrictions, that is not up to the building department to enforce. But what it is up to the building department to do is not to empower them to continue to move forward by conducting inspections on their property. And so to the extent that the building department is not able to inspect the property, essentially, I can't send a worker to a site that shouldn't be operating. I have a statutory responsibility as a manager, as the chief building official, and as anybody else that would be Ontario Hydro would be the same for doing electrical inspections, that sort of thing. But in terms of the building department saying that the builder cannot deal with that fence, that is not what I was intending to imply. I was just strictly responding to the email that you sent out to everyone to clarify that this was not a building department issue, that that Dan had previously responded to you on this. Bylaw was working on it. And but if there was some question why they weren't working on site, I was just trying to clarify that they couldn't be working on the building at this time due to COVID restrictions. I don't know if that helps clarify that, but.
It certainly helps me a lot. Thanks, Councillor. Thank you. And Councillor McKechnie, you got a follow-up there? I saw you flash the card.
Yeah, no, I appreciate Scott's explanation. I think, we're caught in a situation where I know the bylaw department's tried to contact the owner of that property, and apparently he doesn't return any his correspondence or phone calls, apparently. And but we still have a situation there where we create a hazardous situation that's been created in my mind anyway, and it seems to have fallen between the cracks between three departments. So anyway, I appreciate it, and I know that Scott and Dan and Joe have it all in hand, and I look forward to it being resolved. And I appreciate Scott's explanation there. And I have to agree. I mean, I'm looking at this website right now, and I'm thinking, like, why did they even bother with it? It's so confusing. So anyway, but anyway, thank you very much, Scott. So
thank you, Dan. I see you've joined us a couple of times on this. Can you comment on the sidewalk and the fence that's over the sidewalk right now, Dan?
Thank you, Your Worship. And yeah, this specific instance, I haven't responded to you, Councillor McKechnie. Just apologize. I'm waiting to hear back from staff on organizing a crew to be able to go out there with the knowledge of the lack of response from the contractor there. I'm trying to put a plan in place to use my road authority abilities to remove that fence from the road allowance. So I don't have a specific date or time yet, but we have a plan coming forward to do that work.
All right. So if I can go to the CAO, Mr. CAO, can you just report back to council just by email that something's happening here and Dan is having some success? Can you let us know?
Certainly.
All right. Thank you. Thank you, Councillor McKechnie. Is that all?
That's it. Thank you very much.
All right. Listen,
Appreciate
great
it.
report, Scott. Is there anybody else with council got any other questions on this report? Okay, seeing none, I'll prepare the call to motion. Thank you, Scott. Council, you've heard the motion. We've got a mover and seconder. I'll call the motion. All those in favor? And that motion carries. Thank you very much. Thank you, Scott McLeod, and thank you to the building department. All right, Council, CS 023. It's a Committee of Adjustment report for April. Recommendation be it resolved that Council of the Township of Clearview hereby one receive CS 023 2021 Committee of Adjustment April 2021 report for information. Mover and seconder for this report on the committee. Where are we at? Mr. Broderick, Mr. Walker. Broderick and Walker, and hello, Nick. Nice to see you there. Nick, did you want to speak to this or something on this report?
Well, yes, I can just give you a brief overview. It's pretty self-explanatory. So
Sure.
if you recall, there was a meeting, last council meeting, in terms of having an application put forward to name the 5 street names within the Ashton Meadows Phase 1A and B.
Hold on a second here. Nick, you're one step ahead. I'm talking about Committee of Adjustment at this time.
Oh,
just
sorry.
give it 1 second, but don't go away because we're going to need you in a minute. Is there any staff who are in on this? Perhaps Deputy Mayor Burton as our representative on the Committee of Adjustment. Is there anything you want to add to the Committee of Adjustment report?
No, it was actually a busy meeting. I think we had 7 or 8 applications, and everything was approved that was recommended by our staff, recommended approvals, and we did so.
Good. All right. Council, then there's nothing further. You've heard the motion for CS 023. So you've got a mover and seconder. I'll call the motion. All those in favor? Very good. The Committee of Adjustment motion carries. And so, Nick, we're going to come to you on the Ashton Meadows. How about I read it and then we'll have a quick comment. A CS 025. Listen, don't feel bad, Nick. Happens to me all the time. I get ahead of myself in this agenda all the time. CS 025 2021 Ashton Meadows Phase 1A and 1B. Recommendation, be it resolved, Council of the Township of Clearview hereby one, receive report CS 025-2021 for street names, Ashton Meadows, Phase 1A, 1B for information. And item 2, approves the following street names for the Ashton Meadows Phase 1A, 1B subdivision, file number 2018-012SD, on lands described as Concession 2 East, Part Lot 23, Registered Plan 51R 35868, Parts 1, 3, and 4 to 10. Clearview. The roads names are Dallas Boulevard, Wilcox Drive, Duncan Street, Clarence Street, and Taylor Street. Very good. Mover and seconder. Walker, Lamers, Walker and Lamers. And Nick, thank you. We did have a quick discussion about this last time when it was presented. Do you have anything further you want to add at this time, Nick?
Well, Your Worship, I'd just like to note that in terms of the name, the only change was for Wilcox. So the applicant originally put forward MacArthur. As you recall, however, it did have some similarities to McCarthy Drive. And for emergency services, any potential conflicts, council had chosen to change it to Wilcox Drive, and that was provided as part of the notice was the Wilcox, not the MacArthur. So proper notification has been provided for that. But other than that, that was nothing much more to add. It's pretty self-explanatory, but I'm here to answer any questions that may be available.
Thanks, Nick. Mara, you're also joining us. Nice to see you tonight. Have you got anything you want to add to this report?
No, thank you, Your Worship. Nick's covered it.
Excellent. Council, any questions to our staff in regards to this report? All right. I have two small items. One is that Clarence Street already exists and it's just extending it. So it's just clarifying that that portion of road is Clarence Street. So that's very clear. The other thing is that the proposed development that would be to the west of the 1A, 1B, you can see how on the drawing that the boulevard extends out and further and then ties into Margaret Street. So that future development would include that street name already. Is that how we're doing this, Mara? Is that how that would work?
Yes, Your Worship, that is correct. You'll still likely have to pass a bylaw for it anyway, just because we need to make sure that we get all of the sections of the street. But when we come to that approval, that will come back to council.
Right. I'm just thinking that you'd want to work with that developer to make them clearly understand that that's already been named. Right. Good. All right, council, anything further on the naming? All right, thank you, staff. Council, you've heard the recommendation. We got a mover and seconder. I'm prepared to call the motion. All those in favor? And that motion carries unanimous. Thank you very much. Ashton Meadows, well done. Okay, site plan approval. This is CS 026-2021. It's in regards to 6319 Highway 26. Recommendation be it resolved that Council of the Township of Clearview hereby one, receive CS 026-2021 report for information. Item number 2, approve the telecommunications tower site plan by Alex Martin Limited, dated December the 17th, 2020, and as amended March 10th, 2021. And item 3, direct staff to provide a letter of compliance that the municipal consultation process has been satisfied, and mail it to the consultant Jacqueline Johnson, Forbesboro Incorporated, and to Industry Canada, ISED. So a mover and seconder on this. Where are we at? Councillor Leishman, Councillor Deneen. All right, Mara Burton is with us again. Nick is still here. Do you have anything further you want to add to this report about the telecommunications tower?
Again, very self-explanatory. There's not too much to add to it. I can note that we have not received any formal comments from adjacent property owners with respect to it. So there was no concerns that have been raised for this specific tower. I think due to its location in more of an agricultural area, and then having the structure located to the rear of the site behind the existing barn and silo structure does also help to remove it from NDCA regulatory areas, as well as from the Ministry of Transportation's setback requirements. So I believe that's probably why we've received little comment about this one, but they've met all the telecommunications protocol, and that's based on my recommendation.
Very good. Mara, anything further?
No, thank you, Your Worship.
Okay, council, any questions to the report? No? Okay, I'm just going to clarify that ISED is Industry Science and Economic Development Canada, which is the new name for Industry Canada. There you go. Members of council, you've heard the motion, and we've got a mover and seconder. All those in favor? And that motion carries unanimous. Thank you, staff. Okay, Parks, Culture, and Recreation. All right, I think Amanda and Terry have been patiently waiting here in this meeting in the wings. So how about we get right to these two items? All right, PCR 008-2021. It's in regards to Small Hall Festival 2021. Recommendation be it resolved that Council of the Township of Clearview hereby, one, receive PCR 008-2021, Small Hall Festival 2021, report for information. And item number 2, approve canceling the Small Hall Festival 2021. Mover and seconder on the floor, please. Roderick and Lamers. Thank you. Hello, Amanda. Hello, Terry. How about we go straight to Amanda? Amanda, you've met with many of our hall representatives, and I know that you had a meeting with some of the volunteers to discuss this very item. So how about you outline some of the items that are in the report that you supported Terry on?
Sure. Thank you very much, Your Worship, and good evening, members of council. The report is pretty straightforward. We are once again recommending that the Small Halls Festival for 2021, which was originally scheduled for September 30th to October 3rd, be canceled in response to the ongoing COVID pandemic and the uncertainty around the variants of concern. There also takes, quite a few months, upwards to 4, 5, 6 months to plan and execute an event of this size. So having, we don't have a magic ball, so we don't know what those rules and parameters are going to look like as we get closer to the festival. I will note, though, special thanks to all of our volunteers. So from our 7 small halls, as well as 3 additional community partners that stepped up and met with me on April 1st, we really looked at a lot of options and tried to come up with creative solutions so we could continue to promote the very best of the Small Halls Festival. That was even prior to the stay-at-home order. So as you can see, things have changed even more so. That being said, as noted in the report, should we have any opportunity to host in-person events in the fall, our department will take all the necessary steps and precautions to do so in a safe manner, similar to what we had done last year with halls and community events that wanted to continue with hosting events. So I'm looking for support from council and unfortunately to share the news that the halls would be canceled once again for this year.
All right, thank you very much for your input and your comments, and also your ability to work with those volunteers and bring some consensus to this topic. So thank you for your work, Amanda Murray. Terry, you were there a minute ago. You disappeared. There you are. Terry, could you comment before I go to members of council about the budget in regards to, it's in the report, but I would ask you just to comment on how we would apply this to our reserve funding for future events.
Yeah, okay, thank you, Your Worship. So the support that council provides for our events annually, they don't impact really a reserve, Your Worship. It's an ongoing annual part of our operational budget. Last year, obviously, we spent a little bit of that money to create the kits that Ms. Murray had developed, to share with all the businesses. And but again, this year, we're going to have a surplus. We're not going to be spending much of our operational budget on our events again this year. And again, during budget time in 2021, we will again seek council support for next year to continue to match the funding that we presently receive.
All right, thank you very much. Members of council, any questions to our staff? Our CIO is here too. Any members of council? Councillor McKechnie, go ahead.
Thank you, Your Worship. Through you to Amanda, I suppose. Amanda, I see in your report here that you've got that two of the small halls, Brentwood and I don't know, is it evening or whatever, are planning events anyway in the autumn or in the fall. I know that Duntruan Hall have talked about having their know-it-all ball in the fall. And their know-it-all ball in the fall. They also are talking about they've had a very successful green beer day in the spring, and they're talking about celebrating the fall colors by having a red beer day in the fall. So I was just wondering if any of the other hall boards indicated that they would be at least having something. Are they planning on it, on anything? Any of the other hall boards?
Amanda?
Yeah, through you, Your Worship. So that's great news. I was not aware that Duntroon was being adventurous and planning some events for the fall. Brentwood and Ottawa and Singhampton all indicated that they would be open to hosting an event. The process that we undertook last year was when a community organization, including our halls, wanted to host a live in-person event. I guess you could call it a live event. They just communicated with me, and we went step by step through the different regulations, working with the health unit and putting in safe steps to ensure the safety of the volunteers, the safety of our patrons, of course, and protecting the public spaces that they were operating in. I would take similar steps with the Duntroon Hall and any of our other community groups. At this point, I think people are still just in a state of shock that here we are entering our second year of the pandemic. So trying to be creative and forward thinking is just a little bit more difficult. But I'm sure as soon as we are able to reopen, our volunteers are going to be biting at the bit to start planning something.
Okay. Thank you very much. And I must say, I don't want to, the Duntroon Hall have just sort of discussed it. I mean, I don't want to say that they're in the planning stage or anything. They're discussing about having something in the fall. So, okay, thank you very much.
I would say all of our halls are being very hopeful. Is there anybody else, any other members of council with questions? All right, members of staff, anything further you want to add? Okay. All right, well, thank you very much, staff, and I appreciate you bringing forward this report. I've certainly been involved with the Small Hall Festival for a long time, and I can appreciate Amanda's comment about taking the time to prepare the event. Now would be the time when things would start to be secured and commitments would be made and finances would be spent to promote such a great event. So it's appropriate that we make that decision now to halt that, so we don't spend money that would not be used to really provide a service to the community. So it's the right thing to bring forward this report at this time. So I thank staff for that. All right, members of council, is there anything further? I'm prepared to call the motion. All those in favor? Yeah, that carries. Thank you. All right. See you in 2022. All right, Terry, don't go away. I've got a report for you, and I know the CIO has a comment on this one too. PCR 009. This is a Parks Recreation user fee bylaw. Recommendation be it resolved that Council of the Township of Clearview hereby receive PCR 009 2021. It's a Parks Recreation user fee report for information. And item number 2, amend bylaw number 117-110, which is our fees and charges bylaw, to include revised fees for the Parks, Culture, and Recreation user fee schedule, known as Schedule J. Can I have a mover and seconder on this, and then we'll hear a report from Terry. Broderick and Deputy Mayor Burton. Terry, would you like to speak to your report?
Sure, yes. Thank you, Your Worship. So this is our annual report to council regarding our set fees that we have for all of our recreational programs. No major changes this year, other than pretty much an industry standard 2% increase to pretty much every cost centers that you see in the report. Again, we're trying to keep it as low as possible, especially during these pandemic times. But again, a very modest 2% increase, which, like I said, is pretty much the industry standard for most recreational programs. So again, I'm available for any questions that anybody may have.
All right. Is there any members of council or anybody who would like to add anything or ask any questions? All right. To the CAO, could you comment, Mr. Ferguson, about us moving forward with this at this time, and whether this is something that could be passed but not enacted unless we passed a bylaw? And I'm wondering, John, if you could comment with Terry's support, whether we agree with the recommendation as Terry's outlined. It's a small increase, but given that this is the COVID time, the user fees are actually not being collected anyway, because nobody's using the parks, nobody's using anything. So I'm not sure if this is actually appropriate. Mr. Ferguson, have you got any comment on that?
Yeah, I think you said it well yourself, Your Worship, in the sense that it is a nominal fee. It's not out of the ordinary, but I think with respect to the time period that we're in, increasing a fee at this time, we probably could put it off. But I don't believe it's something that would be disapproved in the future.
Right. Well, exactly. And Terry, as a manager, makes a good case for it. And it's a very small minor fee, but it is an increase. And yet, just last year, we passed a resolution here at this council to basically half the fees for the minor sports, minor recreation. So I just find this confusing that we have this in front of us. So anyway, council, you got any questions or any comments on this? Deputy Mayor, go ahead.
Yes, I'd be willing to put forth a motion to defer until, let's pick a date. Let's defer it till September 30th. By that time, we should have a better idea where we are in COVID. We can always defer it again.
Yeah, that's a fair recommendation. Terry, before I call for the deferral, would that cause any issues to notification of any of our user groups of any small changes, Terry?
Yeah, thank you, Your Worship. It may. Again, we adopt this fee bylaw effective May 1st, 2021, obviously till April 30th, 2022. And it's in line with our user groups' budgets. So, during this time, I would say in the next couple of weeks, as an example, our hockey groups are putting together their budgets for the upcoming season. And so they like to know what the set rate will be for the entire season. So, putting it off, that's fine. I mean, or not even having an increase either. Again, we're just putting forward the 2% that we typically do on an annual basis. And like you said, Your Worship, right now, Council does have a special motion resolution in place to provide a 50% discount, but up to the end of the summer. And again, the fees that are in front of you today are also for the entire winter season as well. So putting it off, I would suggest, if Council wants to put it off, maybe just not have the increase this year, because hitting them with the increase later on in the season may have an impact on our user groups' annual budget.
Fair enough. I have a deferral on the floor, but I will, yes, go ahead, Mr. Ferguson.
Yeah, the deferring it to see how we make it through this next, I guess, wave of COVID that we're experiencing. If we defer it, I would defer it for a shorter period of time. Defer it to next month, and we may know more at that time. And if not, we'd have to defer it again to the next month. But I think we should evaluate it on a monthly basis. That way we won't get too far behind or ahead of our potential user groups.
Good comments. I'll get back to that in a minute. I saw Councillor Walker, you had your card up. Bob?
Yes, Your Worship. Terry pretty well covered. I was going to say that the reason we do it now is to allow the user groups their budget for budget purposes, which Terry has already covered that. And that's why we do it this way. If at this point we're not having any usage of our facilities, then if we could go ahead and pass this and nobody's paying anything anyways at this point in time, it's in place so that if things do start to materialize, we can continue to move forward with the new rates. Or I agree with Terry, we can do that option, or the other option is no increase at all for this year, swallow it and just put it all in place so everybody knows what's happening instead of a waiting game that we're putting it month by month by month until such time as we make a decision. I think the teams need that security to know that they are have that set price in mind.
I'm going to go back to the deputy mayor. You called for a deferral. Can you outline your deferral and we'll.
Well, I understand what the CAO said, and I think 30 days is too short. I would say deferred for 60 days would be realistic. The bottom line is we can publish these numbers. So any of the groups putting their budgets together can plan for the increase. Whether we decide to put it in or not is immaterial as far as their budgeting. We can just publish the numbers of what the increase is going to be, and they can base their budgets on that. But let's defer it, in case we, but I'll say deferred for 60 days. I don't think 30 days is going to be.
60 days. Councillor Broderick, go ahead.
Thank you, Your Worship. I don't think we're doing anybody any favors by deferring it. It's going to create issues with budgets. Yeah, somebody or people could assume that it's going to happen, but it just muddies the water. It does not help. The other thing I'm concerned about, if you push off increased costs, and I've seen this done with other organizations that I've been involved with, where they pushed off costs and did it continually for several years and wound up being forced to reckon with a huge increase in fees. That's even more harmful. So I've got some concerns about it. Personally, I would like to support it as it is, or as it was presented to us.
All right. If nobody else has anything, Deputy Mayor, I'll look for a seconder. Is there a seconder on the deferral? No? Oh, Mr. McKechnie, are you seconding the deferral? Yes? Okay. All right, so council, we've got a motion to defer for 60 days on this entire report. So I'm prepared to call the motion if there's nothing further on the discussion of deferral. No? On the deferral item, moved by the Deputy Mayor and seconded by Councillor McKechnie, deferring PCR 009 for 60 days. So perhaps to the clerk's office, we'll find an actual council meeting date. I'll call the motion. All those in favor of deferral? And are those opposed? All right. Well, it'll pass as a deferral. Thank you, council, and thank you for that. We will look to the clerk to find us a date and report back to us. Terry, thank you for that, and thank you, Mr. CAO, for also contributing to that discussion. All right, members of council, Public Works, we have PW 016, hot mix paving tender. All right, recommendation be it resolved. Council of the Township of Clearview hereby award tender number 2021-02 to Coco Paving in the amount of $859,161.60, which includes HST for hot mix paving. A mover and seconder on the motion, please. Where are we at? Broderick and Deneen. Councilor Broderick, Councilor Deneen. Hi, Dan. Do you have anything you want to add to the Coco Paving hot mix tender?
Not at this time, Your Worship. I'm here to answer any questions the council may have.
Thank you. Members of council, any questions? No, seeing none, I'll call the motion. All those in favor? There we go. And that carries. Thank you very much. All right, council, moving on to page 5. We are at the finance department. So I think Kelly's with us here somewhere. Yes, she is. Hello, Kelly. Finance FIN 011. It's the online payment service. It's called Payments Contract Amendment. Recommendation, be it resolved that Council of the Township of Clearview hereby receive FIN 011-2021 online payment services Paymentus contract amendment. Report for information. And item number 2, approve bylaw 21-45. Can I have a mover and seconder, and then we'll hear from Kelly. Where are we at? Mr. Broderick, Mr. Deputy Mayor. Mr. Broderick's always quick with that. I always see his card first. Hi, Kelly. Can you outline for us the changes in this amendment to the agreement?
Absolutely. Thank you, Your Worship, through you to members of council. Paymentus is the group we've been working with for 5 years now for all of our online credit card payments. So what this contract is doing is expanding those services so that when the City View program is up and running, we can expand into building permits, potentially dog tags, some of our accounts receivable accounts. So just bringing more online payment options to the consumer.
All right. Any questions to our staff and our treasurer regarding this? Members of council? All right. Thank you, Kelly, for that. Members of council, you've heard the motion, and we've got a mover and seconder. All those in favor? And that motion carries. Thank you very much. And now we have the Legislative Services Clerk Department, LS005. Brenda, this is the request for assistance regarding COVID Relief Fund. There are 2 items in here. Recommendation be it resolved that Council of the Township of Clearview hereby 1, receive LS005 2021 request for assistance COVID Relief Fund report for information. And item number 2, approve $1,500 to the Creemore Farmers Market and $10,000 to the Clearview Stainer Food Bank coming from the COVID Relief Fund. Can I have a mover and seconder, and then we'll hear from Brenda. We'll go with Councillor Patterson and Councillor Deneen. Councillor Patterson and Deneen. Brenda, I know you've worked on this report, and I know you've consulted with Councillor Leishmans and Deputy Mayor Burton. Is there anything you want to add to this, Brenda?
No, there's nothing to add to this, Mayor Measures. It's in the report. One of the requests was from Councillor Deneen's motion from the last council meeting, and then we had a further request submitted from the Creemore Farmers Market for the $1,500, and that was to come out of the COVID Relief Fund that was set up during the 2021 budget discussions.
Excellent. Any members of council with any questions to this motion? All right, seeing none, thank you, Brenda, for that, and thank you for your work on this report. I'll call the motion. All those in favor? And that motion carries unanimous. Thank you very much. I also want to acknowledge the volunteers at the Clearview Stainer Food Bank. Last week was Volunteer Appreciation Week, and we certainly appreciate the work that they do in our community, helping our community every day too. So thank you. Members of council, we've got a few bylaws to get through here. Bylaw 21-44. This is the amending appointment bylaw of 19-06. It's in regard to the Brentwood Hall Board and our Economic Development Action Committee. Recommendation be it resolved that bylaw 21-44, being a bylaw to amend appointment bylaw 19-06, be presented and read a first, second, and third time, finally passed on the 26th day of April 2021. Can I have a mover and seconder on the bylaw, please? Councillor Lamers, Councillor Deneen. Councillor Lamers, Councillor Deneen. Members, any questions? Seeing none, I'll call the motion. All those in favor? And the bylaw carries. Thank you very much. And I want to welcome to the Economic Development Action Committee, Heather Harding, who is with the BIA. So our Economic Development Action Committee is now fulfilled all of our appointments. And so our committee will get down to work at our 3rd meeting coming up here in a few weeks. Thank you. And also want to acknowledge and recognize our volunteers from the Brentwood Hall Board and appreciate their service as volunteers to our community every day. Very good. Council, bylaw 21-45 to amend Schedule A of bylaw 15-10. It's in regards to that paymentus agreement. Recommendation be it resolved, bylaw 21-45 being a bylaw to amend Schedule A of bylaw 15-10 be presented and read a first, second, and third time, finally passed on the 26th day of April 2021. Can I have a mover and seconder? Oh, Councillor Patterson would like to speak. Go ahead, Tom. Actually, hold on.
Did we not just approve this in Finance 0011?
we're going to approve it now because bylaws are approved in the second section of the
I
council meeting.
understand that, but the motion reads approved bylaw 2145.
2145, yes. Yeah, we approve bylaw 2145, so we do it here in the bylaw section. So, because it's recommending, be it resolved the council attention hereby. Yeah. All right. Mover and seconder on the motion, on the bylaw, please. Broderick, Deputy Mayor. Is that clear then, Councillor Patterson? Thank you. Yep. Okay, I'll call the bylaw. All those in favor? And that carries. Thank you. That is, you're right. There is a little confusion in the language there, but we always clear all of our bylaws at the end here. So that's how it goes right in our agenda. All right. Number 2146 is the permitting retail businesses to open on statutory holidays under the Retail Business Holiday Act. Recommendation, be it resolved that bylaw 2146, being a bylaw to permit retail business establishments to operate on statutory holidays under the Retail Business Holidays Act, be presented and read a first, second, and third time and finally passed on the 26th day of April 2021. Mover and seconder, please. That'd be Councillor Deneen and Councillor Leishman. Deneen and Leishman. And is there any questions or comments? Seeing none, I'll call the motion. All those in favor? And are there any opposed? And the bylaw carries. Thank you. Okay, that's clear. 2147 is to amend Schedule J, which is our fees. So we're going to hold that because that has to do with our our motion that was deferred. So, Madam Clerk, if I can just note that 2147 will further be deferred to that date when we have that come back. Fair enough? All right, Council, we're at item 13, notices of motion and new business. Is there anybody got anything they want to bring up? No? All right. Item 14 is our bylaw to confirm the proceedings of the council meeting. Recommendation, be it resolved that bylaw 2147, being a bylaw to confirm the proceedings of the April 26, 2021 council meeting, be presented and read a first, second, and third time, finally passed on the 26th day of April 2021. Okay, a mover and seconder on the confirmatory, Councillor McKechnie, Councillor Broderick, Councillor McKechnie and Broderick, and I'll call the motion. All those in favor? And that bylaw carries. And council, item 15 is our motion to adjourn, unless there's anything further for the good of the meeting. Okay, I see some cards going yes. Motion to adjourn. Recommendation that council meeting be adjourned at 9:15 p.m. Be moved by Councillor McKechnie, seconded by the Deputy Mayor. And council, I will call the motion. All those in favor? Right on. Thank you very much. That motion carries. So we will adjourn this meeting at this time and remind everybody to please stay safe. Please, no social gathering, no gatherings at all, but to get out and enjoy your community and support your local businesses with takeout. All the best, folks, and thank you for joining us tonight.